12 most mysterious ancient discoveries on Earth that science cannot explain. Hello, and welcome to the Ancient History Channel. My friend, have you ever noticed that the deeper we explore the past, the more we begin to realize that some things are far more complex than we were ever taught? History is not just a collection of numbers and dry events. Sometimes it feels more like a maze. The deeper you go, the more dead ends you encounter with no clear answers. So, on today's journey, we're going to explore the 12 most mysterious ancient discoveries on Earth. Stories so chilling that simply hearing them might give you goosebumps. There are mummies that have existed for thousands of years, yet remain almost perfectly preserved, to the point that they look as if they're merely asleep. There are shipwrecks resting deep beneath the ocean for over a century, yet somehow they have not deteriorated as one would expect. And even more astonishing, there are fossils capturing strange moments of survival so unusual that even modern science has yet to fully explain them. Think about it. If everything truly follows the natural laws we understand, then why do these phenomena exist? And it doesn't stop there. There are ancient burial sites discovered right beneath the feet of modern civilization, under schools, beneath residential neighborhoods, places we pass by every day without realizing that an entire world from thousands of years ago lies hidden below. So how much do we really understand about history? And could it be that what we know is only a small fragment of the truth? Let's dive deeper into each mystery, because the answers you uncover might just change the way you see the world forever. Are you ready to explore with me? If so, let's begin with our very first discovery right now. Mummy, 1,000 years older than Egypt, buried in the heart of the Sahara. When we think of mummies, most of us immediately picture Egypt, a place where bodies have been preserved almost perfectly for thousands of years. But what if I told you that there is a mummy even older than those famous ones, and instead of resting inside a pyramid, it was buried in the middle of a harsh desert? Would you believe it? If not, let's travel back in time to the winter of 1958. That was when archaeologist Fabrizio Mori arrived at a natural cave called Uan Muhugiag, deep in the desert mountains of southwestern Libya. This place had once served as a shelter for ancient pastoral people. At first glance, the cave didn't seem particularly remarkable, aside from the rock carvings depicting humans, animals, and livestock, as if telling the story of a world long gone. But things began to turn strange when Mori decided to dig into the soft sand beneath the cave floor. What he uncovered was something he likely never expected, a mysterious bundle buried just below the surface. It was made from goat or antelope skin. When he opened it, he didn't find objects, but the dried remains of a small child. The child's body had been carefully wrapped in layers of leaves, as if someone had tried to protect it with the utmost care. But what truly astonished scientists wasn't just the preservation, it was how the body had been treated. This child had undergone a complete mummification process. The internal organs had been removed through incisions in the abdomen and chest, a technique known as evisceration, and then replaced with herbs. Sound familiar? Yes, it's the same method famously used by the ancient Egyptians. But here's the astonishing part. This mummy dates back approximately 5,400 to 5,600 years ago, more than 1,000 years earlier than the earliest known Egyptian mummies. Just think about what that means. The child, named Tashwinat, died at only about 3 years old. The body was placed in a fetal position, and around the neck was a necklace made from ostrich eggshell beads, a small detail that adds a deeply emotional layer to the story, as if someone had left behind a final expression of love. What makes this story even more extraordinary is the surrounding environment. Today, the Sahara is one of the driest places on Earth, but during the time Tashwinat lived, this region was completely different. It was once a lush landscape filled with vegetation, lakes, and abundant life, a period scientists call the African Humid Period. The cave paintings tell that story. Elephants, giraffes, crocodiles, animals you would never associate with a desert. Archaeologists have even discovered fish bones and ancient fishing tools, proving that this area was once rich in water and life. So the question remains, was the mummification process at Uan Muhugiag a precursor to ancient Egyptian techniques? Or was it an entirely independent culture that just happened to develop a remarkably similar method? To this day, science does not have a clear answer. But one thing is certain, the mummy of Tashwinat has completely changed how we view African history. It shows that the mysteries of the past are not only hidden within grand pyramids, but also buried deep in the most unexpected places, waiting to be discovered. Mysterious 3.3 feet mummy in a Roman-era cemetery in Egypt. On April 12, 2010, a team of Egyptian archaeologists captured the attention of the scientific community when they discovered a mummy in a Roman-era cemetery located about 18 miles southwest of Cairo. At first, this might not seem particularly unusual. After all, Egypt is famous for its mummies. But what made this discovery truly remarkable was that it marked the first time a Roman-period mummy had been found in the Bahariya oasis, a place already shrouded in mystery. And what made the find even more puzzling was its size. The mummy was placed inside a coffin measuring only about 3.3 feet in length, intricately carved with remarkable detail. Given such a small size, archaeologists initially believed it must belong to a child. However, upon closer examination of the patterns and symbols engraved on the coffin, they realized things were not so simple. Inside that small coffin was the mummy of an adult woman. Doesn't that sound strange? An adult body placed in a space so small it seemed meant for a child. And that's not all. The body was dressed in a long garment laid out neatly, with the eyes covered by multicolored stones, a detail both beautiful and unsettling, as if reflecting a mysterious ancient ritual. Because of this, archaeologist Mahmoud Afifi, the head of the excavation team, even described it as a one-of-a-kind discovery. The coffin itself did not clearly indicate a specific date, but the burial style strongly reflected the Roman period in Egypt, a time that began in 31 BC and deeply influenced local culture. But the story doesn't end there. During the excavation, researchers also uncovered a golden relief depicting the four sons of Horus, the sky god in ancient Egyptian mythology and the son of Osiris. If you've heard of him before, you'll recognize Horus as the deity often symbolized by the sharp, watchful eyes of a falcon, eyes that seem to guard the souls of the dead. This detail raises an intriguing question. Was this woman an important figure, someone of high status in society, or simply an individual buried with special rituals for reasons that history has yet to explain? Interestingly, the cemetery where this mummy was found is not small. It contains 13 different tombs, yet this remains the most intact mummy ever discovered at the site. And if you think that's all, you'd be mistaken, because Bahariya holds even more secrets. This oasis became famous for another astonishing discovery known as the Valley of the Golden Mummies, where numerous mummies covered in gold leaf were found, dating back to the Greco-Roman period. This suggests that the area was once an extremely important burial center. All of this reflects a core belief of the ancient Egyptians, the belief in eternal life after death. That's why, as early as around 2700 BC, they developed mummification techniques not only to preserve the body, but also to prepare for a journey into the afterlife. Strange yet undeniably fascinating, isn't it? 130,000-year-old fossilized body beneath the ground in Italy. If I told you that deep beneath the earth, among cold rock walls and suffocating darkness, there lies a human who has remained still for over 130,000 years, their body coated in minerals and appearing as if trapped within a strange coral-like forest, would you believe it? If not, let's travel back in time to 1993. That was when archaeologists unexpectedly discovered such a fossilized body inside a calcite deposit in a cave system near the town of Altamura, Italy. This body is not located in an easily accessible place. To reach it, one must crawl through narrow underground crevices for about 20 minutes, where a single misstep could mean being swallowed instantly by darkness. Because of this dangerous terrain, even to this day, scientists have been unable to bring the skeleton to the surface. Instead, they can only observe and study it in place under extremely limited conditions. To make it easier to refer to, scientists gave it a simple yet meaningful name: Altamura Man. What makes Altamura Man truly extraordinary is not just its ancient age, but also its remarkably well-preserved condition. Through extensive analysis and careful examination, experts have determined that this is the skeleton of a Neanderthal, a prehistoric human species that once lived alongside our direct ancestors. In fact, Altamura Man is considered one of the best preserved Neanderthal skeletons ever discovered. Based on the position of the remains, scientists have proposed a heartbreaking theory. Altamura man may have accidentally fallen into a deep pit, unaware of the danger ahead. After that fatal fall, he was unable to escape, and no one came to rescue him. And so, death came slowly, in isolation, from hunger and thirst in the cold darkness underground. Just imagining that scenario is enough to send chills down your spine. DNA analysis shows that Altamura man lived approximately 130,000 to 172,000 years ago and died as an adult. Before his death, he had already lost 2 teeth, a detail that surprised researchers. Anthropologist Jacopo Mojicecchi from the University of Florence noted that most Neanderthal skeletons previously discovered tend to have very healthy teeth. However, Altamura man is a completely different case. Some of his tooth roots were exposed, believed to be a sign of periodontal disease. Several of his lower molars also showed tartar buildup, indicating that he likely suffered from significant dental issues. These findings offer scientists deeper insight into the health and daily life of Neanderthals, rather than viewing them simply as prehistoric hunters from textbooks. And there's more. Altamura man's front teeth were much larger than those of modern humans. He likely used them as a kind of third hand to bite and tear meat, a habit that clearly reflects the harsh survival conditions of prehistoric life. As you can see, from a silent body lying in the darkness, Altamura man tells us a powerful story about life, death, and the evolution of humanity. A story told without words, yet deeply haunting. Fascinating, isn't it? The body of an alien on Mars. A controversial video was recently uploaded to YouTube by the account StreetCap1, in which the researchers shared a mysterious image from the surface of Mars, once again captured by NASA's Curiosity rover. In the video, a strange object appears in the photograph, resembling a human figure. When the image is zoomed in, the figure seems to be lying face down, with a large head and long legs, sparking curiosity and speculation among space enthusiasts. Some believe this could be evidence of extraterrestrial life, possibly a dead organism, or even a living being. However, many skeptics argue that it is merely a naturally shaped rock formed by the effects of wind and the harsh environmental conditions on Mars. As a result, the online community quickly split into 2 camps, one supporting the alien hypothesis, while the other insists it is simply an optical illusion or a coincidence of nature. Despite the controversy, StreetCap1 has boldly claimed that his discovery is drawing attention from intelligence agencies. He alleges that certain intelligence agents have taken to social media to oppose his theory with the intention of covering up the truth. In an interview with the British newspaper Express, he even mentioned major US intelligence organizations such as the CIA and NSA, which he believes are monitoring and interfering with information related to this finding. However, neither organization has issued any official comment regarding his claims. After seeing this image, what do you think? As for me, regardless of what the truth may be, this photograph has certainly sparked intense debates about the possibility of extraterrestrial life and the role of authorities in controlling information. Of course, that does not necessarily mean that aliens truly exist. As of now, the question of whether extraterrestrial life exists remains one of humanity's greatest mysteries. 17 skeletons in an 800-year-old well reveal a bloody mystery of ancient England. Deep beneath the ground of a modern shopping center in the city of Norwich, England, a place once bustling with the footsteps of passers-by, lies a discovery that stunned the entire archaeological world. An ancient well, seemingly just a forgotten relic, unexpectedly revealed a dark secret buried for more than 800 years. It all began in 2004, when the first excavators dug into the ground in preparation for the construction of a new shopping complex. The workers could never have imagined they would encounter such a haunting scene. 17 human skeletons piled on top of one another at the bottom of the well. But the most disturbing aspect was not the number, it was their positions and arrangement. These remains were not buried with the dignity typically seen in ancient graves. Instead, the bodies had been thrown into the well chaotically, head first, limbs twisted, bones stacked upon bones as if they had been discarded, without any sign of respect or burial ritual. This was not an accident. It was a tragedy. What happened? Who were these people? And why were they abandoned in the darkness of history in such a manner? These questions haunted archaeologists because this was no ordinary excavation. The well, now effectively a mass grave, contained faint yet powerful traces of a tragedy long concealed for centuries. Immediately after the discovery, a team of experts was assembled to carefully examine each set of remains. They employed advanced DNA analysis technology, and it was here that the truth began to emerge. Among the 17 skeletons, at least 6 individuals shared the same genetic profile, indicating they were related. Tragically, this included 3 sisters, one of whom was only 10 years old at the time of her death. This was no longer a group of strangers, it was a family. A family that had endured their final moments together in unimaginable sorrow. They did not die from disease. They did not die from an accident. They died from violence, from hatred, from religious persecution. After months of research, genetic analysis revealed another striking finding. All of the victims carried genetic markers associated with the Ashkenazi Jewish community, a group of Jewish people who lived scattered across Europe during the Middle Ages. This clue helped historians trace the roots of the Gutna. Historical records show that in February 1190, matching the estimated age of the well, a violent riot took place in the very city of Norwich, where a Jewish community once lived. During the time of the Third Crusade, waves of anti-Jewish sentiment spread across England. Religion, instead of serving as a refuge for the soul, became the justification for brutal persecution. At that time, the Jewish people of Norwich were blamed, suspected, and pushed to the brink of survival. Then, disaster struck. Many were killed, regardless of age or gender. Those who could not escape, like the unfortunate family at the bottom of the well, were captured and thrown into the darkest place, as if to erase every trace of their existence from the world. For centuries, the well lay silent beneath the earth, without a story, without a gravestone. But now, archaeologists have given a voice back to those forgotten souls. And as you can see, had it not been for the accidental excavation by workers that year, the world might never have known this story. A story in which every bone, every strand of DNA, and every historical detail helps reconstruct the tragic picture of a crime once buried. It can be said that the discovery in Norwich is not just an archaeological milestone. It is a powerful reminder that the past, no matter how deeply forgotten, still leaves its traces. And only when we are patient enough to dig deeper, to listen, and to understand, can the fragments of history finally come together. What about you? When you look at the image of those 17 skeletons, what do you think? Curiosity, fear, or sorrow for lives buried simply because of differences in belief? As for me, I honestly can't find the words to describe what I feel right now. The skeletons of 5,000-year-old giants in China. When people think of ancient humans, many imagine small, slender figures living simple lives in harsh natural environments. However, an archaeological discovery in Shandong Province, eastern China, has forced many to completely rethink that image. Here, archaeologists uncovered the skeletons of giants dating back as far as 5,000 years, individuals whose height would be impressive even by modern standards. Specifically, during excavations, scientists discovered multiple tombs containing the remains of men standing up to about 6 feet 3 inches tall, while others measured around 5 feet 11 inches. These figures are not estimates, they were determined based on well-preserved skeletal structures. At this point, many people might wonder, in a time when food was scarce and living conditions were difficult, how could people grow so tall? According to Fang Hui, head of the School of History and Culture at Shandong University, if the tallest individual were still alive and standing fully upright, his actual height might even exceed 6 feet 3 inches. Even more intriguing is that these taller individuals were often buried in larger, more elaborate tombs compared to shorter individuals. This detail has led researchers to believe they may have held important roles within their community, possibly of higher social status or at least with better access to food resources. Beyond their remarkable height, these skeletons tell additional stories. Upon closer examination, archaeologists found clear signs of injuries on the skulls and leg bones of several individuals. These wounds raise many questions. Were they involved in battles or conflicts, or did they endure harsh events during their lives? In addition, within 6 of the giant tombs, researchers also discovered pottery and jade artifacts, items that not only held practical value, but also carried significant spiritual and social meaning at the time. The excavation site is located in Jiaojia village, Shandong province. Since 2016, this site has yielded a series of remarkable discoveries, including the remains of 104 houses, 205 tombs, and 20 sacrificial pits. These numbers suggest that Georgia was once a large, well-organized settlement with a relatively advanced community life during the Neolithic period. The story becomes even more fascinating when considering that Shandong is also the birthplace of several historically tall and prominent figures. Confucius, the renowned Chinese philosopher, is believed to have stood around 6 feet 3 inches tall and was born in this region. Zhuge Liang, the legendary strategist of the Three Kingdoms period, was born in Yangdu, now part of Shandong province, and is often described as tall with a striking presence. Could it be that this region has long had a tradition of producing tall individuals? It's certainly possible, as even today, the people of Shandong take pride in their height. For example, in 2015, men in Shandong were recorded to have an average height of about 5 feet 9 inches, higher than the national average. Looking back at these 5,000-year-old skeletons, many are left wondering how much genetics, environment, and diet contributed to their exceptional height, and I am no exception. All of these giant skeletons belong to a Neolithic civilization dating from about 4,500 to 5,000 years ago, once living along the lower reaches of the Yellow River. To this day, there is still no definitive answer as to why they were so tall. However, a diverse and abundant food supply is considered a key factor. Beyond the astonishing skeletons, the colorful pottery and jade artifacts found at Georgia also reflect a relatively prosperous and comfortable life for its inhabitants, leaving future generations with both unanswered questions and a deep sense of wonder. The ship lost for 107 years beneath Antarctic ice of explorer Ernest Shackleton. In one of the coldest seas on Earth, where thick ice can crush anything in its path, there lies a ship resting silently on the ocean floor for more than a century, almost perfectly preserved. It sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? But this is a true story that came to light in 2022. That year, the world seemed to hold its breath when the wreck of the Endurance, the ship that once carried the legendary explorer Ernest Shackleton to the edge of Antarctica in 1915, was discovered at a depth of more than 9,800 feet beneath the Weddell Sea, in a condition remarkably close to its original form, as if time had simply forgotten it. But to truly understand the significance of this discovery, we have to go back more than 100 years. In February 1915, the Endurance became trapped in the dense pack ice of the Weddell Sea. Massive slabs of ice tightened around the ship day by day, hour by hour. Despite the crew's best efforts, nature showed no mercy. After months of struggling and despair, on November 21, 1915, the ship was finally crushed and sank into the freezing ocean. Then came the unimaginable. Shackleton and his 27 crew members were stranded in an endless expanse of drifting ice. In a situation like that, what do you think their chances of survival were? Probably zero, right? But Shackleton refused to accept that fate. He made a bold decision. He and 5 crew members set out on a journey of nearly 800 miles across icy seas to reach South Georgia Island. This was not just a voyage, it was a true fight for survival, where every wave and every gust of wind could claim a life at any moment. And incredibly, they succeeded. Shackleton returned and rescued all the remaining men. Not a single life was lost. To this day, it is considered one of the greatest survival stories in the history of exploration. But what about the Endurance? It vanished as if it had never existed, until more than a century later. In February 2022, an expedition named Endurance 22 was launched by the Maritime Heritage Trust, led by the South African icebreaker Agulhas II. The team used advanced technology, from deep-sea submersibles to sophisticated navigation systems, to search an area that was nearly impossible to access. And then, the moment finally came. The wreck of the Endurance was found about 4 miles south of the position last recorded by Captain Frank Worsley. When the first high-resolution images were transmitted, everyone was stunned. The ship was still there, intact, silent, as if telling its own story. Even Menson Bound, the expedition director, could not hide his emotions, calling it the finest wooden shipwreck he had ever seen. Ironically, the very ice that once trapped and doomed the ship had also acted as a protective shield, preserving it from the destructive forces of time. Yet there is one thing that leaves many people with a sense of regret. Despite being a historic treasure, the wreck of the Endurance must remain undisturbed on the ocean floor. Under the Antarctic Treaty, no one is allowed to touch or recover it. So even today, it remains there, amid darkness and ice, a silent witness to history. But in the end, this story shows us something powerful. Human determination and perseverance can overcome even what seems impossible. Wouldn't you agree? Giant fossil that challenges the limits of evolution. If you think the blue whale, the heaviest animal on Earth, represents the ultimate in size in the natural world, you may have to think again. Recently, scientists announced the discovery of fossils belonging to a gigantic creature called Perucetus colossus, found in Peru and dating back about 38 to 40 million years. Even the name sounds extraordinary, doesn't it? The colossal whale of Peru, and remarkably, it may have rivaled or even exceeded the blue whale in weight. According to estimates, Perucetus may have weighed at least 85 tons, with an average estimate around 180 tons. To give you a clearer picture, the largest blue whale ever recorded weighed about 190 tons and measured over 108 feet in length. Meanwhile, Argentinosaurus, the heaviest land animal ever to walk the earth, weighed only around 76 tons. Yet Perucetus, an ancient inhabitant of the ocean, may have reached the mass of a multi-story building. A true prehistoric sea monster, wouldn't you say? The fossils were discovered in a coastal desert in southern Peru, an area well known for its rich whale fossil deposits. This time, researchers excavated 13 vertebrae, 4 ribs, and part of a hip bone belonging to Perucetus. What intrigued scientists the most, however, was the extremely dense and heavy bone structure. This condition, known as pachyosteosclerosis, is typically found in marine mammals like manatees and dugongs, not in open ocean whales or dolphins. The skeleton alone is estimated to weigh between 5 and 8 tons, about twice as heavy as the bones of an adult blue whale. With its bulky, massive body, Perucetus is believed to have resembled a sea cow more than a typical whale. In fact, it reminds scientists of Steller's sea cow, a species discovered in 1741 that went extinct just a few decades later due to human hunting. However, the absence of a skull and teeth in the fossil record makes it difficult to determine exactly what Perucetus ate. Based on its body structure, researchers suggest it was likely not an active predator. Instead, it may have roamed shallow waters, feeding along the sea floor by digging into the sand and consuming small mollusks and crustaceans. Another fascinating detail is that, although Perucetus belonged to an ancient group of whales, it still retained traces of hind limbs, evidence that its ancestors were land-dwelling mammals about the size of a medium dog, possibly with hooves. Whales as a group left land more than 50 million years ago, and Perucetus stands as a remarkable example of that dramatic evolutionary journey. When compared to Basilosaurus, another ancient whale that was long but lighter, we see two completely different evolutionary paths. Basilosaurus was a fierce predator, with a streamlined body and powerful jaws. In contrast, Perucetus followed the opposite strategy: slow-moving, massive, relatively inactive, and reliant on small food sources. Two species sharing the same ocean, yet representing entirely different survival strategies. Now imagine this. Tens of millions of years ago, on the ocean floor, a creature weighing hundreds of tons slowly gliding across the sand, quietly searching for food. It's a scene that truly highlights the diversity and wonder of evolution, enough to send chills down anyone's spine, and I'm sure you feel the same way. Dozens of skeletons in stone coffins beneath a North Wales college campus. Imagine walking across your school grounds every day, stepping along familiar paths while just beneath your feet lie dozens of ancient human remains that have rested there for nearly 2,000 years. That alone is enough to send a chill down your spine, isn't it? Some might even say it sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, but this story is entirely real. It happened in 2016 at the Coleg Menai campus of Llangefni College in North Wales. That year, as workers began renovating the walkways around the campus, they had no idea they were about to uncover a secret buried since Roman times. It wasn't until the soil was dug up that stone coffins began to emerge, and with them, ancient skeletons slowly came into view. Not just one or two, but dozens of human remains. The stone coffins had done something that time rarely allows, preserving the skeletons inside in remarkably intact condition. And it wasn't just bones. Archaeologists also discovered a number of grave goods, particularly bronze items bearing strong Celtic cultural influences. Together, these findings painted a vivid picture of the past, as if these individuals had only just been laid to rest yesterday. After years of excavation, the number of remains discovered exceeded 50. But what truly captured researchers' attention wasn't just the quantity, it was the details surrounding them. A Roman coin from the 2nd century, along with numerous valuable bronze artifacts, clearly confirmed that this site had once been an ancient cemetery used during the Roman occupation of Britain. But the story doesn't end there. When scientists conducted carbon isotope analysis to determine the origins of those buried, the results surprised everyone. Most of the individuals were not native to the island of Anglesey. Dr. Irene Garcia Rovira, a bioarchaeologist, revealed that at least 2 individuals came from Scandinavia, while 2 others originated from the Iberian Peninsula. This means that nearly 2,000 years ago, this area was already a meeting point for people from distant lands and diverse cultures, which raises an intriguing question. How did they get here? Were they Roman soldiers, traders, or migrants seeking a new life? Whatever the answer may be, it's clear that this site was more than just a cemetery. It stands as powerful evidence of cultural interaction, a place where Romans, native Celtic tribes, and people from faraway regions coexisted during a turbulent period in history. There's another fascinating detail. The site has not yet been fully excavated. According to Dr. Rovira, what has been uncovered so far is only a small portion, and future, deeper excavations may reveal even greater secrets. Mr. David Evans, director of Grup Landrillo Manai, also expressed his excitement. He emphasized that the discovery is not only academically valuable, but also helps the local community better understand the place they live in. That what seems like ordinary ground was once a crossroads of an entire ancient world. Today, all of the remains and artifacts have been carefully preserved and are on display at the Oriel Mon Museum in Longifny. But what matters most is not how they are displayed. It's the story they tell. A story of people, of journeys, of life and death, and of how history can lie right beneath our feet, silent for thousands of years, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. And who knows, perhaps the ground you're standing on right now is hiding a secret just like this. It's entirely possible, because that's the ancient world, always mysterious, always fascinating in its own extraordinary way. 3,000-year-old mummy beneath a garbage dump reveals a chilling ancient sacrificial ritual. In the heart of Peru's bustling capital, Lima, a place people associate with traffic noise and the smell of waste, lies a hidden secret that has stunned the archaeological world. Beneath layers of earth filled with tons of modern garbage, researchers unexpectedly discovered a mummy more than 3,000 years old, revealing traces of a mysterious ancient civilization, the Manche culture, where human sacrifice was believed to be a way to communicate with the gods. This remarkable discovery was made by a team of archaeologists and students from the National University of San Marcos. While surveying what seemed like an unremarkable plot of land, a clump of hair and part of a human skull suddenly appeared from the trash, prompting the team to immediately stop. At first, they assumed it was just the remains of an animal, but as they dug deeper, the situation quickly exceeded all expectations. Beneath layers of garbage weighing several tons lay a remarkably well-preserved mummy, positioned in the characteristic flexed posture of ancient burials. To retrieve it, the team had to remove approximately 16,500 pounds of trash and debris, an enormous amount for such a small area. When the final layers were cleared, the researchers were left in awe at the condition of the mummy, preserved astonishingly well despite more than 3 millennia having passed. The site was immediately secured for careful excavation and study. What makes this discovery even more intriguing is the presence of numerous artifacts found around the mummy, including corn kernels, coca leaves, and various seeds. These items were commonly used as offerings in ancient Peruvian religious rituals. According to archaeologist Miguel Aguilar, these objects, along with the mummy's seated posture and burial placement, suggest that this individual may have been a sacrificial offering during the final stages of constructing an ancient temple. Preliminary analysis indicates that the mummy bears clear characteristics of the Manche culture, which existed between approximately 1500 and 1000 BCE. The Manchu people are known for building U-shaped temples oriented toward the sun, reflecting their deep reverence for deities and the cosmos. In a striking coincidence, this mummy was found within an ancient U-shaped structure, suggesting that this individual may have been chosen as a bridge between the human world and the divine. According to the research team's hypothesis, the Manchu believed that human sacrifice at the final stage of temple construction would bring blessings and eternal protection from the gods. Those selected for sacrifice were often healthy individuals with status or important roles within the community. They were not seen merely as victims, but as people chosen by the gods. Looking back, it is astonishing to think that in the middle of a modern 21st century garbage dump, a living witness of a civilization lost for over 3,000 years could be uncovered. The image of the mummy lying silently among piles of trash creates a haunting contrast between a sacred past and a harsh present. A mummy beneath a garbage dump may sound unbelievable, but it is a real fragment of history, a testament to how ancient people confronted death, belief, and their desire to reach the divine. Perhaps they could never have imagined that thousands of years later, their story would be rediscovered among the waste of the modern world, as a reminder that the past is never truly gone. 2,000-year-old smiling skeleton discovered with valuable jewelry. On May 15th, a remarkable archaeological discovery was reported by The Sun in Russia, when a farmer named Rustam Mudayev accidentally unearthed a male skeleton estimated to be around 2,000 years old. After careful examination and research, archaeologists confirmed that the remains belonged to a man with a distinctively deformed skull, a feature not uncommon among ancient nomadic tribes. Despite the harsh wear of time, the man's teeth remained intact, indicating exceptional preservation within the burial site. What astonished researchers even more was the presence of numerous valuable pieces of jewelry buried alongside the skeleton. This strongly supports the theory that the remains may belong to a leader of the Sarmatian tribe, one of the powerful nomadic peoples who once dominated regions of what is now Russia around the 5th century CE. Georgy Stukalov, a scientific researcher at the Astrakhan History Museum, stated, "After thoroughly examining the burial site, we suspect this may be a royal grave, a type of burial commonly associated with noble family tombs in ancient nomadic cultures. In fact, the skeleton was discovered in a wooden coffin with the head positioned higher than the rest of the body, creating the impression that the deceased was lying on a pillow. This was a unique and culturally significant burial arrangement, typically reserved for individuals of high social status." Alongside the remains, archaeologists uncovered a collection of daggers and numerous ornate gold artifacts, including a gold belt buckle adorned with turquoise, as well as a small golden horse head placed between the skeleton's legs. These items not only highlight the elite status of the individual, but also reflect the distinctive culture of the Sarmatians, renowned as powerful nomadic warriors who used horse imagery as a symbol of strength and social rank. Near the main burial site, archaeologists also discovered the remains of a woman buried with a bronze mirror, an object symbolizing refinement and the important role of women in Sarmatian society, along with a sheep-shaped sacrificial offering and various stone objects. The presence of these ritual items suggests complex and highly symbolic burial practices, reflecting the religious beliefs and traditions of ancient nomadic communities. Not far away, another grave containing the remains of an elderly man was found, accompanied by horse head-shaped ornaments decorated with silver and bronze. This further indicates that the area served as a burial ground for multiple high-status individuals within Sarmatian society, with funerary rites carried out according to strict traditions and customs. These discoveries provide valuable insights into the social structure and cultural practices of the Sarmatians, offering important clues about how they built their communities, organized power, and practiced their beliefs nearly 2,000 years ago. The excavation of this Sarmatian royal burial not only opens a window into the life of a powerful ancient nomadic tribe, but also demonstrates the remarkable preservation of artifacts and human remains over thousands of years. It stands as clear evidence of the sophistication of their burial rituals, as well as their craftsmanship in jewelry and weapon making. At the same time, these valuable artifacts help historians and archaeologists reconstruct a richer historical picture, deepening our understanding of the social, economic, and cultural development of the region that is now part of modern-day Russia. The collaboration between archaeologists, historians, and museums continues to drive more in-depth research into Sarmatian culture, while also bringing their ancient story to modern audiences through exhibitions and academic studies. This discovery is also a powerful reminder that beneath the ground, countless mysteries remain undiscovered, waiting to reveal fascinating stories about civilizations long gone and the people who once lived on this land thousands of years ago. 2. 3,000-year-old burial mounds reveal the mystery of the Red Giants, traces of those who did not belong here. People often say the earth never keeps its secrets. Forever, it simply waits for the right moment to tell its story. And in northern Serbia, two ancient burial mounds that had lain silent for thousands of years suddenly spoke, bringing with them a discovery that left scientists stunned. It wasn't gold or treasure, but skeletons stained a vivid red, with sizes that would startle anyone who saw them. When the research team from the Institute of Archaeology and Ethnology of the Polish Academy of Sciences began excavating, they knew they were dealing with something far from ordinary. These two mounds were significantly larger than the surrounding ones, as if built to mark the status of extraordinary individuals. Each mound measured about 131 feet in diameter and stood between 10 and 13 feet tall, constructed from oak wood, a choice that was far from random in ancient times. That scale alone raises an important question. Who was worthy of being laid to rest in such a structure? Inside, the burial chambers were quite spacious, large enough to hold multiple bodies interred in two phases, separated by 1 to 2 centuries. The oldest skeletons had been there for nearly 3,000 years, silently witnessing the passage of time unknown to the world. Yet strangely, despite the grandeur of the tombs suggesting a noble class, the number of grave goods was relatively small. By now, you're probably starting to sense that something feels off, right? Then came the moment no one could forget, when the first skeletons were carefully cleaned and revealed under the light. Some of the male remains were not only larger than usual, but also bore a deep red hue, as if they had been dyed not long ago. In reality, that color had endured for thousands of years. Scientists determined that this was the result of the bodies being covered in red ochre after death, an ancient ritual with profound meaning. Think about it. Why would people go through the effort of coating the dead in red pigment? Not for decoration, but because, in their belief system, red symbolized power, sacredness, and perhaps even the journey into the afterlife. This ritual dates back more than 5,000 years and was reserved only for individuals of special status in society. That means the remains found in these mounds were certainly not ordinary people, but that's not all. What makes this story even more intense is their height. These men all stood over 5 feet 11 inches tall, a remarkable figure compared to the average height of about 5 feet 3 inches among the local population at the time. They weren't just taller, they were almost overwhelmingly so, like giants stepping out of another world. And from this, a hypothesis began to take shape. According to Dr. Piotr Włodarczak, the combination of unusual height and the red ochre burial ritual suggests a fascinating possibility. These individuals may have been migrants. They could have come from the Eastern European steppes, regions where the use of red ochre in burials was common, and where people tended to have more robust physical builds. So the question is, how did they get here? War, migration, or some journey that history has yet to record? And if they were outsiders, why were they buried with such honor in a distant land? The deeper researchers dig, the more complex the story becomes. And perhaps that's exactly what draws us in, reminding us that the past is not as silent as we once believed. Sometimes, all it takes is turning over a single layer of earth for a mystery thousands of years old to begin telling its story once again. 1,700-year-old female skeleton with an elongated skull resembling an alien. Hidden beneath the ancient soils of the majestic Caucasus Mountains in Russia, a mystery from the distant past has just been awakened. The skeleton of a woman who lived nearly 1,700 years ago has been unearthed, bearing a striking and unusual feature that has astonished archaeologists: a skull elongated like an egg, reminiscent of the extraterrestrial beings often depicted in popular culture. But what makes this discovery truly remarkable is not just its strange appearance. It also opens a window into the complex historical and social narratives of a civilization that once existed in what is now modern-day Russia. The excavation took place at the Gomurzievskoye settlement, located on a hillside in the Republic of Ingushetia, a strategic region between the Nazranka and Sunja rivers. This project is part of a collaboration between the Caucasus Archaeological Institute and the Yevgeny Krupnov Archaeological Center, which began several months ago. While studying an ancient burial site, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a woman believed to have belonged to the upper class during late antiquity, specifically in the 4th or 5th century AD, a time when Europe was entering the Dark Ages, marked by profound upheavals that swept away classical civilizations and ushered in the medieval era. Her skull exhibits an unusually elongated shape, extending prominently toward the back, unlike any natural form found in modern humans. However, this phenomenon is not the result of a congenital deformity or anything supernatural. Instead, it is the outcome of an intentional cultural practice known as cranial deformation. According to researchers from the Caucasus Archaeological Institute, during her early years, the girl's head and neck were tightly bound or compressed using cloth bands or rigid devices to alter the natural growth of her skull. This process created a distinctive shape that was regarded as a symbol of nobility and power. The practice of cranial shaping was carried out by various ancient groups around the world, including the Sarmatians, Alans, and Huns, nomadic and semi-nomadic peoples who once dominated vast regions from Eastern Europe to Central Asia. For them, an elongated skull was not only a mark of beauty, but also a sign of social status, superior intellect, or even a sacred connection to the divine. As a result, only individuals from elite classes or those with special roles in society underwent this procedure from infancy. Beyond the unusual skull shape, the woman's burial site provides valuable insight into the life and culture of the community she belonged to. Alongside her remains, archaeologists discovered numerous significant artifacts, including weapons, jewelry, ancient pottery, and animal bones, both from wild and domesticated species. These findings suggest that this was a burial site reserved for someone of high status, possibly a spiritual leader, a member of royalty, or a noblewoman with considerable influence in the ancient Caucasus region. Notably, experts observed that her teeth were relatively well preserved despite being buried for centuries. This offers researchers a rare opportunity to analyze her diet, daily habits, and overall health during her lifetime. From this, they can gradually reconstruct the portrait of a woman who lived through a time of great transformation, while also gaining deeper insight into the social structure and ancient beliefs of the Caucasus region. This discovery not only enriches our understanding of the ancient civilizations that once existed within the territory of modern Russia, but also raises intriguing questions about cultural exchanges among Eurasian nomadic societies in the post-Roman era. Was this skull shape a borrowed symbol of power from a neighboring culture? What role did this woman play in her community? A shaman, a spiritual leader, or simply a noblewoman? And above all, why was such an unusual physical trait so highly valued that it required intervention from early childhood? Although not all of these questions can yet be answered, each bone and every fragment of pottery serves as a piece of a much larger story. A story that had never been told until now. As the dust of time is brushed away, the mysteries hidden beneath the earth gradually come to light. And we, living in the 21st century, are given a rare opportunity to reconnect with the souls of a civilization that existed nearly 2 millennia ago. Shipwreck containing billions in treasure discovered off the coast of Colombia. It's hard to believe, isn't it? What once seemed like the stuff of legends or Hollywood blockbusters has now become a stunning reality. Recently, the Colombian Navy announced one of the most astonishing maritime archaeological discoveries of the 21st century. 2 ancient shipwrecks were found off the country's coast. Ships filled with gold, silver, coins, bronze cannons, and centuries-old priceless artifacts. Experts say this is not just a discovery of massive material value. It is a time capsule opening a window into the dramatic past of the Spanish Empire and Colombia's fight for independence. Among the 2 ships, one has been identified as dating back to the Spanish colonial era, a time when Spain ruled much of South America, plundering its resources and shipping vast treasures back to Europe. The other is believed to be around 200 years old, likely linked to Colombia's independence war, a period when patriotic forces did everything they could to resist colonial control. Both wrecks were found at great depths in the Caribbean Sea, uncovered through a combination of advanced seabed scanning technology and valuable archived historical data. But the most remarkable part lies within these sunken vessels. Hundreds of gleaming gold coins, antique bronze cannons, and rare European porcelain pieces dating back to the 17th and 18th centuries. According to archaeologists and historians, the gold recovered from just one of the ships alone could be worth billions of US dollars, an almost unimaginable sum for any underwater excavation in recorded history. Experts also suggest that the treasure may have belonged to the Spanish crown, wealth extracted from its colonies and shipped to Europe to fund military campaigns, or perhaps to aristocrats and merchants whose fortunes were lost to war and violent storms at sea. Currently, Colombian authorities are developing a detailed plan to recover both ships and their full collection of artifacts. The operation is being approached with extreme caution and scientific precision, involving the Navy, archaeologists, conservation experts, and the National Museum. The goal is not only to bring the treasures to the surface, but also to study them, determine their exact age and origin, and most importantly, uncover the mysteries long buried beneath the ocean and the sands of time. What makes this discovery even more extraordinary is that beyond its material value, it offers an opportunity to better understand the region's maritime history and Colombia's crucial role in the transatlantic trade routes of centuries past. The recovered artifacts could help tell the stories of hundreds of sailors, traders, and warriors, nameless figures who shaped history, now finally being heard through the fragments left behind. Furthermore, preserving and displaying these items in museums will not only help future generations better understand their national heritage, but may also establish Colombia as a major destination on the global map of underwater archaeological tourism. This could mark the beginning of a new wave of discoveries in the country's treasure-rich waters, an area often referred to as the graveyard of colonial shipwrecks. The story of the fig tree growing from Ahmet Hergun's body is not only a mysterious legend, but also offers a new perspective on the connection between life and death, between humans and nature. And in a world full of mysteries, perhaps stories like this will always inspire those who seek the truth hidden beneath the surface. Mysterious 23 feet shipwreck suddenly emerges from the sands of the New Jersey shore. The ocean has a very strange habit. It can swallow everything in an instant, yet sometimes it returns things to the shore in ways no one could ever expect. Proof of this came on a cold day in December 2018, when the coastline of New Jersey suddenly became the center of attention. An ancient shipwreck unexpectedly emerged, as if it had just been awakened after more than a century, lying beneath layers of sand and waves. At the time, local residents were simply taking a walk along the beach when they noticed something protruding from the damp sand. It wasn't just ordinary driftwood, it was wooden beams arranged in a clear structure, all pointing to the remains of a ship. Within a short time, news spread quickly, drawing both locals and researchers to the site to witness it firsthand. As wind and seawater gradually stripped away the sand, the outline of a vessel about 23 feet long began to take shape. Just imagine a ship lying silently beneath the sand for hundreds of years, completely unknown, only to suddenly appear before human eyes after a storm or a shift in the tides. It's chilling just to think about, isn't it? According to initial assessments, the ship dates back to the 19th century, a time when maritime trade played a crucial role in transporting goods. But what makes the story even more intriguing is this: no one knows exactly which ship it was. Some believe it is simply the remains of an unidentified vessel that sank and was buried by sand over time. Others, however, think it carries a specific story, a piece of forgotten history. One of the most notable theories comes from Stan Spurlack, an expert from the Cape May County Museum. He explained that the area where the wreck appeared has long been known as a danger zone for sailors. Powerful storms frequently sweep through, combined with challenging coastal geography, causing many ships to meet their fate at sea. According to him, this wreck could very well belong to the D.H. Ingraham, a vessel that once transported cargo from New Jersey to Virginia before it was lost in 1886. If this theory proves true, the story behind it becomes even more compelling. Imagine a cargo ship battling a violent storm at sea, the wind howling, waves crashing relentlessly. And then, all it takes is a single mistake, a mechanical failure or a sudden shift in the wind, and everything ends in an instant. The ship sinks, taking everything with it, disappearing from history until now. Terrifying, isn't it? The problem is, as of now, it remains only a theory. Archaeologists are still investigating, analyzing each piece of wood and every remaining detail to uncover the truth. And it is precisely this lack of definitive answers that makes the discovery more fascinating than ever. You see, sometimes history isn't found in books. It lies right beneath our feet, waiting to be uncovered. A 23-foot ship may not seem very large, but the story it carries could span centuries, perhaps even longer. And who knows, out there beyond the shore, there may still be hundreds, even thousands of other ships resting silently on the ocean floor, waiting for the day they too will be returned. Just like this one. After all, when it comes to the sea, anything is possible, isn't it? Naked female skeletons found in a Tang Dynasty tomb. The story began on what seemed like an ordinary morning in 2018, when construction workers were building a stretch of highway in Baotou City, Inner Mongolia, China. While leveling the ground, they unexpectedly unearthed a strange structure buried deep beneath the red soil. No one could have imagined that this discovery would lead them, and us, into a historical mystery stretching back more than 1,300 years. As soon as the authorities were notified, archaeologists rushed to the site. Before them gradually emerged an ancient tomb, lying silently underground for centuries. Based on initial findings, experts determined that it was a burial site dating back to the Tang Dynasty, one of the most prosperous periods in ancient Chinese history. After completing legal procedures and initial assessments, the excavation officially began. Over the course of 6 continuous days, the team worked tirelessly through layers of thick dust and time-worn debris to reach the heart of the tomb. And then, they uncovered something that stunned everyone. A coffin placed at the center, surrounded by 4 other sets of human remains. What shocked the team even more was that 2 of the skeletons belonged to women who were completely unclothed. Not a single piece of clothing had been buried with them. What happened inside this tomb? Why were 2 women interred in such a condition? And who were the people buried here? Part of the mystery began to unravel thanks to artifacts and an inscribed tombstone discovered later. According to the engraved text, the man inside the main coffin was identified as Qin Fen, who once served as the assistant commander of the northern capital under the Anbai Protectorate, a fairly high-ranking military position during the reign of Emperor Gaozong of Tang. Qin Fen wasn't born into nobility. On the contrary, he grew up in a poor family with 5 younger siblings. His only path to rise in the rigid social hierarchy of that time was to join the military. Starting as a lowly foot soldier, or xiaozu as they were called then, Qin Fen gradually proved his talent and determination. Through numerous military achievements, he climbed the ranks in a ruthless political landscape. By the time of his death in 698 AD, Qin Fen had secured not only a prestigious title, but also left behind a tomb shrouded in mystery, one that continues to intrigue scholars to this day. However, one disturbing detail has left researchers deeply unsettled. According to the tombstone, the 4 women buried with Qin Fen were his wives and concubines, who were sacrificed to accompany him into the afterlife, per his final wishes. His son, Qin Huan, honored his father's request, allowing the ladies to follow him into the next world, along with treasures of gold, silver, pottery, and jewelry. As chilling as it sounds, this practice, known as retainer sacrifice, was not uncommon in ancient times. It appeared in China, Korea, and other early civilizations, driven by a strong belief in the afterlife. But a more unsettling question remains. Why were 2 of the women buried without clothes? This crucial detail was conspicuously absent from the tombstone's inscription, and to this day, it continues to puzzle the archaeological community. Were they executed in that condition? Was it part of a spiritual or religious ritual we no longer understand? Or could it reflect social hierarchy within Qin Fen's household, where the favor or disfavor of a powerful man could determine not only a woman's death, but also her dignity in death? There is no definitive answer. But regardless of the reason, this discovery has opened an astonishing new chapter in our understanding of Tang Dynasty culture and society. It is not just a tale of a poor man who rose to power. It is a broader reflection of belief systems, spiritual practices, and the darker side of power relations, where life and death could hinge on a single dying wish. What do you think of the tradition of powerful 4,500-year-old female mummy in Peru? While the world remains fascinated with studying Egyptian mummies, on the other side of the globe, in the distant land of Peru, archaeologists have made a discovery that has left the scientific community in awe. A female mummy over 4,500 years old was unearthed in Aspero, an ancient fishing town belonging to the Caral civilization, considered the oldest city in South America. What makes this discovery remarkable is not just its age, but the identity of the woman buried within. A powerful figure whose legacy continues to astonish researchers today. According to experts, the woman was between 40 and 50 years old at the time of her death. She was buried in a ceremonial area, likely reserved for individuals of high social status. Inside the tomb, archaeologists discovered a collection of valuable artifacts, clear evidence that she was far from an ordinary person. Among the findings were 4 carved bone objects decorated with images of birds and monkeys, symbols representing the connection between humans, nature, and the spiritual world. There was also a container holding plant remains and seeds, possibly offerings used in ritual ceremonies. Most notably, researchers uncovered a beaded necklace with a pendant made from spondylus shell, a rare and highly prized material found only in the coastal waters of northern Ecuador, hundreds of miles away from Aspero. This indicates the existence of long-distance trade networks, providing strong evidence that the Caral civilization had developed a sophisticated exchange system long before the rise of the powerful Inca Empire thousands of years later. According to Ruth Shady, director of the Caral archaeological site, the objects found in the tomb not only reflect wealth, but also highlight the woman's important role in ancient society. At a time when many other civilizations viewed women as subordinate, in Caral, they appear to have held leadership positions and had a significant voice within the community. Shady believes that the woman buried in this tomb may have been a spiritual leader or a religious officiant, someone who served as a bridge between humans and the gods. The discoveries do not end there. In a nearby ceremonial area, archaeologists also found 8 flutes made from animal bones, evidence that music played a sacred role in the spiritual life of the people of Aspero. The sounds produced by these flutes may have guided the souls of the deceased or been used to honor the gods during important rituals. Remarkably, despite more than 4 millennia having passed, the woman's body remains relatively well preserved, allowing researchers to study her skeletal structure and even reconstruct her appearance. She does not display the imposing aura of a queen, but instead radiates a sense of calm and dignity, as if still resting peacefully beneath the sands of time. For this reason, it is no exaggeration to say that this discovery is more than just an archaeological fragment. It is compelling evidence of the role and influence of women in the ancient Caral society. They were not merely homemakers or mothers, but active contributors to the development, belief systems, and even political power of their time. Yet questions remain. Who exactly was this powerful woman? What position did she hold in the oldest civilization of South America? And could there still be other tombs hidden beneath the sands of Aspero, belonging to women who once shaped history, yet remain unknown to humanity? These questions remain unanswered, waiting patiently for archaeologists to uncover the truth. But one thing is certain: this 4,500-year-old tomb has changed the way we view women in the past. Individuals who may have stood quietly behind the scenes, yet possessed a power so profound that even time itself seems to bow before it. Prehistoric cemetery in the Amazon rainforest, revealing life 9,000 years ago. Deep within the dense Amazon rainforest, where sunlight struggles to penetrate the thick canopy, lies an ancient cemetery buried for thousands of years. And what's remarkable is that no one even knew it existed until recently. What seemed like a chance discovery has opened a gateway straight into humanity's distant past. The story began when Professor of Archaeology Gaspar Morcote, along with 3 students from the National University of Colombia, conducted a survey in the WWII region. At first, they were simply searching for minor traces of ancient inhabitants. But the deeper they dug, the more they realized they were facing something far more significant. Beneath layers of moist soil and tangled roots, a skeleton gradually emerged, belonging to a young individual around 25 to 30 years old, who lived in a time when humans had not yet developed agriculture. At this point, can you imagine what life was like for this person? No farming, no permanent settlements. Survival depended entirely on nature. Their diet likely consisted of whatever the forest provided, nuts, seeds, and hunted animals. It may sound simple, but it required extraordinary adaptation to one of the harshest natural environments on Earth. Yet what truly astonished archaeologists went far beyond the skeleton itself. During the excavation, they uncovered a massive rock wall stretching about 131 feet in length and approximately 66 feet in height, covered in ancient carvings. These were not random markings. They bore the clear imprint of a symbolic system, possibly representing art or perhaps spiritual and ritual practices of ancient people. Just imagine the scene. Deep in the jungle, a towering rock face intricately carved by humans who lived thousands of years ago. They had no machines, no modern tools, yet they left behind creations that still leave us in awe today. So why did they do it? To record their stories or to communicate with the spiritual world? And the discoveries didn't stop there. Further findings revealed traces of communities from around 2,000 years ago, people who had already begun practicing agriculture and crafting pottery. This suggests that the Amazon was not only home to hunter-gatherers, but also a region that witnessed humanity's transition into more advanced stages of development. Even more impressively, stone tools dating back as far as 9,000 years were discovered. These seemingly simple objects provide clear evidence of technological progress among ancient people. They didn't just survive, they innovated, adapted, and evolved in their own way. All these pieces, from the skeleton and the carved rock wall to the ancient tools, are gradually coming together to form a larger story about human life in the Amazon rainforest. A story not just about survival, but about creativity, belief, and evolution over thousands of years. Isn't that fascinating? 700-year-old tomb, bearing the name, Great Sage, equal to heaven. In a mountainous region of Fujian, China, where clouds blanket the landscape year-round, there lies an ancient tomb that remained silent for centuries, unknown and untouched. That is, until one day in the 1980s, when archaeologists accidentally made their way to the summit of Baoshan Mountain and discovered something that left the academic world stunned. It wasn't gold or treasure, nor an elaborate royal burial, but two cold stone stelaes engraved with four unmistakable characters. Great Sage, equal to heaven. At this point, you might be thinking the same thing many did back then. Wait, isn't that the title of Sun Wukong in Journey to the West? But hold that thought, because the real mystery lies here. This tomb dates back around 700 years to the Yuan Dynasty, centuries before Journey to the West by Wu Cheng'en was ever written. So what does that mean? Is Sun Wukong purely a fictional character, or a literary adaptation of someone or something that may have actually existed? The deeper archaeologists explored, the more unsettling the discovery became. The tomb itself was not particularly elaborate, rather simple in fact, but every detail seemed to tell a story never recorded in history. The two stone steles did not only bear the title Great Sage equal to heaven, but also another unfamiliar name, Great Sage who connects heaven. A title rarely seen in literature, yet placed alongside the former, as if these two figures once coexisted within a shared belief system. Then came the most debated discovery of all, a massive iron staff over 23 feet long, forged from solid metal, buried deep beneath layers of earth and stone. Just think about it. Could such a colossal staff be a coincidence when it bears an uncanny resemblance to the legendary Rui Jinggu Bang, the magical weapon of Sun Wukong? Or could this be the original inspiration behind that iconic myth? And that's not all. Within the tomb, archaeologists uncovered numerous traces related to monkeys, from carved patterns on stone surfaces to ritual objects. All of it suggests a deep reverence for a creature seen as intelligent, powerful, and imbued with mystical qualities. This has led many researchers to consider a compelling theory. Before becoming a literary figure, the Great Sage equal to heaven may have been a folk religious symbol, worshipped as a guardian deity by ancient people. But the story doesn't end there. Some scholars propose that this figure may have originated from Wujiki, a water demon in Chinese mythology described as having an ape-like form and immense strength. Over time, fragmented legends may have been combined, shaped by storytellers, and ultimately brought to life by Wu Cheng'en as the vivid character we now know as Sun Wukong. Still, not everyone is convinced. More cautious experts suggest that the tomb may simply belong to an ancient sect where revered figures or symbolic beings were deified. The titles equal to heaven and connects heaven could have been honorifics for leaders or spiritual icons, rather than direct references to Sun Wukong as we understand him today. This only goes to show how fragile the boundary between history and legend can be. A tomb that lay silent for 700 years is now powerful enough to make the world question one of the most iconic figures in East Asian culture. And who knows, beneath the ground we stand on today, there may still be countless mysteries waiting to be uncovered, simply awaiting the right moment to reveal themselves. Secret World War II shelter discovered beneath a backyard. Some archaeological discoveries don't require deserts, pyramids, or large-scale excavations. Sometimes, history is simply lying dormant right beneath our feet, hidden within the most ordinary moments of everyday life. Recently, in the quiet town of Southwick in England, a family unexpectedly stumbled upon history when they discovered a World War II shelter hidden beneath their backyard, 3 years after moving into the home. This story, which feels like something straight out of a movie, left not only the homeowners but the entire community in shock. A wartime structure, once a place of life and death refuge, had resurfaced in a modern setting where the past seemed long buried. Catherine Milburn, 32, along with her husband Liam and their 2 young children, had been living in the house since 2021. During those 3 years, they had no idea that an old military structure lay beneath the very ground where their children played, where they gardened, and where they relaxed with afternoon tea. There were no visible signs on the surface to suggest the presence of an underground shelter, until they decided to renovate a small shed in the garden. The discovery began when the couple noticed a roughly 10-foot section of concrete beneath the floor of the old structure. As they dug deeper, steel bars began to emerge from the soil. At first unsure of what they were seeing, their curiosity and a growing sense that something wasn't quite right pushed them to continue digging. Catherine later told Jam Press, "We started seeing curved steel sheets, like corrugated metal, nothing like a normal foundation. At that moment, all we could say was, 'Oh my God, what have we just found?'" The deeper they dug, the clearer the structure became. A metal staircase leading downward appeared, along with a narrow tunnel, though it was filled with water. While they couldn't explore further due to flooding and damp conditions, the structure alone was enough for them to reach a surprising conclusion. This was an Anderson shelter. Anderson shelters were a common type of civilian air raid shelter built in Britain in the late 1930s, designed to help families survive intense German bombing raids during World War II. Typically buried about 3 feet underground, they were constructed from curved, corrugated steel panels bolted together for strength and durability. Each shelter could protect up to 6 people, a standard family size at the time. These shelters were where British families spent countless nights during air raids, where children learned to stay silent amid the thunder of bombs, and where resilience and the will to survive were forged during one of the darkest periods of the 20th century. For the Milburn family, this discovery is more than just an unusual find. It is a living piece of history right in their own backyard. Catherine shared that she and her husband are excited about the possibility of preserving and restoring the shelter. They plan to drain the water, clean it, and bring light into the space, possibly even transforming it into a small historical exhibit to educate future generations. Encouragingly, the discovery has also attracted attention from their children's school. The school has expressed interest in organizing educational visits to the shelter, turning it into a kind of home museum where students can gain a deeper understanding of what their ancestors experienced during the war. There may be nothing more powerful than stepping into a real shelter once used to survive bombings, touching the very steel panels that once trembled under the force of air raids. From a chance discovery, this family has uncovered a priceless piece of heritage, a vivid fragment of Britain's wartime past. And what makes it even more remarkable is that this shelter isn't in a museum or a history book. It lies just beneath the ground they walk on every day. This is the unique beauty of archaeology, its ability to bring the past back to life in the present, reminding us that history is not just something that has passed, it is something that still exists, waiting to be uncovered in the most unexpected places. The City of the Dead, beneath Paris, reveals a chilling truth about 6 million remains. Beneath the crowded and glamorous streets of Paris lies an entirely different world, one few dare to imagine. There are no lights, no music, only endless corridors and walls built from human bones. This place is the Paris catacombs, a vast underground labyrinth containing more than 6 million sets of human remains, quietly existing for centuries. Just hearing that number is enough to send chills down your spine. But the way this place came to exist is what truly makes people stop and think. The story begins in the mid-18th century. At that time, Paris was not only a cultural center, but also a destination for people from all over, drawn to live and work in the city. As the population grew rapidly, a seemingly small problem became a serious crisis. There was no longer enough space to bury the dead. Cemeteries became overcrowded. Bodies were buried on top of one another, and in some areas, severe pollution began to spread. The air grew suffocating, and living conditions were directly affected. Authorities were forced to act quickly to prevent the city from descending into a full-blown crisis. Fortunately, beneath Paris already existed an extensive network of limestone quarries, carved out over centuries. These tunnels were vast but abandoned, leaving the ground unstable and prone to collapse. That's when a bold idea emerged. Why not use these empty spaces to solve both problems at once? And so, the plan began. Over the course of several years, especially during a peak period lasting about 2 years, millions of remains were transferred underground. Everything was done in silence, under the cover of night. Cart after cart quietly left the cemeteries, carrying bones into the depths below. There were no ceremonies, no public attention, only layers of bones stacked upon one another, forming the haunting walls that still stand today. At first, this was merely a practical solution, cold, functional, and nearly forgotten. But everything changed when Napoleon Bonaparte came to power. More than just a military leader, he recognized the unique potential of this underground system. With careful planning and reorganization, the catacombs were gradually transformed into a site of historical significance, one that could be visited both to preserve history and to spark human curiosity. Yet stepping into a place that holds millions of human remains is not simply a tourist experience. Strange stories have long surrounded the catacombs. Some claim they hear footsteps echoing behind them, even when no one is there. Others say that in the darkness, shadowy figures sometimes pass by too quickly to tell whether they are real or just illusions. And deeper within the maze, rumors persist of hidden chambers, places said to be used by secret societies. Whispers speak of mysterious rituals, and names like Satan, Valak, and Paimon are occasionally mentioned. While no concrete evidence has ever confirmed these claims, the uncertainty only makes the atmosphere feel even heavier. If there's one piece of advice repeated more than any other, it's this: never attempt spirit summoning or seances here. In a place filled with so much death, you can never be sure what you might be reaching, or whether something might answer back. Above ground, Paris shines, vibrant and alive. Below, a silent world holds the memories of millions. Two contrasting realities existing side by side, reminding us that history is not only found on the surface sometimes, it lies deep beneath our feet, cold, quiet, and full of mystery. The 5,000-year-old remains of an elite woman in Peru. In a remarkable discovery in Peru, archaeologists have announced the excavation of the remains of a woman dating back as far as 5,000 years, a finding that is not only astonishing in terms of age, but also opens an entirely new chapter in our understanding of the role of women in ancient civilizations. What makes this discovery especially significant is that the woman is believed to have belonged to the upper class of the Caral civilization, the oldest known civilization in the Americas, comparable in age to great ancient cultures such as Egypt, China, and Sumer in Mesopotamia. However, Caral stands out for a mysterious reason. It developed independently, without influence from any other contemporary civilization. Caral is located near the Pacific coast, about 112 miles from Peru's capital, Lima. This ancient city is considered the earliest center of development in the Americas, featuring large-scale architecture, a clearly stratified society, and a rich spiritual life. The latest discovery was made at Aspero, a site that was once considered an ancient refuse area within Caral, yet holds immense archaeological value. According to archaeologist David Palomino, who led the excavation team, this area was once used as a burial ground for high-status individuals of that time. The woman's remains were found in remarkably well-preserved condition, and the items accompanying her burial further enhanced the significance of the find. Her body was wrapped in a coat made of feathers in shades of blue and brown, which experts believe may have come from birds native to the Amazon rainforest, most likely macaws, a rare and valuable species not typically found along the coastal region where Caral is located. The use of Amazonian bird feathers not only indicates long-distance trade connections, but also reflects the care and respect given to the deceased. In addition, archaeologists discovered several valuable items around the burial, believed to be ceremonial offerings. These included finely crafted baskets, ceramic vessels, dried gourds used as containers, and notably, the beak of a toucan, a tropical bird with symbolic significance in many ancient South American cultures. These objects were not merely funerary goods, they reflect the importance of this woman within Caral society. She may have been a spiritual leader, a healer, or even a figure with political influence. Although scientists have not yet determined the exact date of her burial, the remains provide strong evidence of the existence and complexity of the Caral civilization, which is believed to have flourished around 3000 BC. This discovery not only helps archaeologists better understand the social structure of Caral, but also raises important questions about the role of women in early civilizations. Did they hold more power, status, and influence than we have previously assumed? And so, beneath the dry earth of an ancient city near the Pacific Ocean, a story buried for 5,000 years is slowly coming back to life, telling us about a woman who was once deeply respected and perhaps even played a role in shaping the course of an entire civilization. The Mummified Monk, inside a forgotten hidden chamber of a temple in China. You know, our world has always been a vast treasure trove of mysterious history. Some secrets are actively sought out, but others are never meant to be found, only to unexpectedly reveal themselves in ways no one could have imagined. And the story of an ancient temple near Mount Song in Henan, China, is a perfect example of that, one that leaves people both fascinated and deeply unsettled when they think back on it. It all began not with archaeologists, but with a group of thieves who broke into the Daming Wang Temple in China, intending to steal valuable treasures. However, before they could take anything, they were discovered and forced to flee in panic. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a failed robbery, but that very incident accidentally uncovered a secret that had been buried for centuries. To prevent future break-ins, the temple reported the incident to local authorities. Soon after, experts from a cultural heritage preservation agency were sent to inspect the entire area. And it was during this investigation that a hidden underground chamber within the ancient temple was gradually revealed, leaving everyone in shock. What made the discovery so astonishing? As they stepped into the dark, damp space of the chamber, what appeared before them was not gold, silver, or precious artifacts, but the mummified body of a monk, lying silently as if in an endless sleep. What's truly remarkable is that the body was almost perfectly preserved. Despite having existed for hundreds of years, possibly even longer, it had not decomposed in the usual way. This left experts in awe, as such natural preservation in near-perfect condition is extremely rare. But the mystery didn't stop there. Right beside the mummy, they discovered a small wooden box, intricately crafted. Every detail suggested it was far from ordinary. Naturally, the question on everyone's mind was, what was inside the box? When the box was finally opened, everyone present was left speechless. Inside was not gold or jewels, as many had expected, but a strange small object that carried an unmistakably sacred presence. At first, no one could identify exactly what it was. Because of that, the artifact was taken away for further detailed study. After a series of analyses, the mystery was finally solved. The object inside the box was a sarira, a highly significant type of relic in Buddhism, often believed to be crystallized, remains left behind after the cremation of accomplished monks. This discovery immediately gave the entire finding deeper meaning. It wasn't just a preserved body. This could have been the remains of a highly respected monk of special status. To confirm this, researchers continued searching for more clues within the temple grounds. Eventually, they uncovered a stone stele inscribed with ancient text. The content of that inscription helped unravel the entire story. According to the inscription, the monk in the hidden chamber was identified as Yuanren, a Japanese monk who had traveled to China during the Tang Dynasty to study Buddhism. After many years of practice and learning, he chose to remain at Daming Wang Temple until his death. And perhaps it was because of his special role that his body was placed in the hidden chamber, along with the sarira, preserved as a way to honor and commemorate him. A forgotten underground chamber, an almost perfectly preserved mummy, and a sacred relic carefully hidden away. Was it all merely a coincidence, or a deliberate arrangement from centuries ago? We may never know for sure. But one thing is certain, this is truly a fascinating discovery, don't you think? The mummy that once awoke. Inside its coffin, terrifying archaeologists. A mummy that actually woke up inside its coffin? Does that sound frightening? Maybe even fictional? Anyone hearing it might assume it only exists in horror movies, right? I thought the same. But the truth behind this story is so chilling that even the most seasoned experts were left shaken. The story began during what seemed like an ordinary road construction project in a village in Qiqihar, Heilongjiang Province, China in 1999. While working, locals unexpectedly uncovered bluish bricks buried deep underground. At first, no one paid much attention, assuming they were just old building materials. But the more they dug, the more bricks appeared, until an entire wall slowly came into view. That's when everyone realized this was no ordinary discovery. It was very likely an ancient tomb. By then, night had fallen and work had to stop. But as you know, the more mysterious something is, the more it fuels curiosity and greed. That very night, two young men from the village secretly returned to the site. Bringing flashlights and tools, they decided to open the coffin in search of treasure. However, the moment the coffin lid was opened, it became a memory they would likely never want to relive. The body inside was not lying peacefully, as one might expect. Instead, it presented a horrifying scene. The mouth wide open as if crying for help, limbs twisted, clothing disheveled, everything suggesting a desperate struggle before death. Needless to say, the two young men were terrified. They fled in panic, not daring to stay even a second longer, and immediately reported the incident to local authorities. The next morning, an archaeological team quickly arrived and sealed off the site, but even those accustomed to working with ancient tombs felt a chill down their spines upon witnessing what lay inside. Initial examinations showed that the tomb was quite simple. There were no jewels or valuable burial items, only the coffin, the body, and 26 coins from the Qing Dynasty. Yet what drew the most attention was the body's near-perfect preservation. The skin, muscles, and joints remained intact, despite having been buried for over 200 years. Based on the skeletal structure, the remains were identified as those of a woman around 25 years old. Her eyes were rolled back, her mouth wide open, as if she had been desperately trying to breathe in her final moments. Another detail that caught experts' attention was that she had 3 pierced holes in her ears, suggesting she was not of ordinary status. She may have belonged to the Manchu nobility or been a concubine of a government official at the time, but that was only the beginning. When the body was taken to a laboratory for further analysis, experts discovered a black lotus-shaped object beneath the woman's legs. After examination, it was identified as a fully formed placenta. This meant she had been pregnant at the time of her death. However, she had not died from an infectious disease or a congenital condition, just a common illness. As her condition worsened, she fell into a deep coma. But due to the limited medical knowledge of that time, she was mistakenly declared dead. Her family quickly arranged a funeral and buried her. Sometime later, she woke up, but she awoke inside a sealed coffin, pitch dark with no air, no escape. She must have panicked, screamed, struggled, using every last bit of strength to call for help until she was completely exhausted and died in despair. The moment of being buried alive is something that deeply haunted the experts who uncovered the truth. Ironically, this very tragedy is also what preserved her body for nearly 300 years. As she struggled inside the coffin, she consumed the available oxygen, creating an environment with extremely low oxygen levels, ideal for preserving the body. A personal tragedy that became a mystery, haunting future generations. This story also helps explain why, in the past, when science and medicine were not yet advanced, people in countries like China and Vietnam often kept the deceased at home for 3, 5, or even 7 days before burial, perhaps to avoid tragedies like this one. 5 camels buried alive reveal a terrifying Inca ritual 500 years ago. In the arid coastal lands of Peru, where dust and sand blanket the traces of ancient civilizations, There is a story that makes anyone who hears it pause for a moment to reflect. This story took place in 2018 at the archaeological site of Tambo Viejo. There, scientists discovered 5 camelids, almost perfectly preserved, lying silently beneath the earth for over 500 years, as if they had only just been placed there yesterday. What truly sends a chill down your spine, however, isn't how well they were preserved, but the way they were found. Each of the 5 animals had been carefully decorated with vibrant items, ropes dyed in red, yellow, blue, and purple, along with feathers and even traces of paint on their faces. Altogether, it was as if they were telling the story of a mysterious Inca ritual from half a millennium ago. And it didn't stop there. As archaeologists continued their excavation, they found that 4 of the camelids had been buried together within a single structure, while the 5th lay separately in a nearby building. At first, this might not seem unusual, but the deeper they dug, the more unsettling the truth became. This arrangement was far from random. It reflected a carefully planned ritual. More disturbingly, these animals had not died before being buried, they were buried alive as part of a sacrificial ceremony. So why would the Inca do such a thing? Was this merely a religious ritual, or was there something deeper behind it? In Inca culture, camelids, especially those with brown and white coloring, were not just livestock. They carried deep spiritual meaning, serving as a bridge between humans and the gods. The colorful cords wrapped around their bodies symbolized important deities, such as Viracocha, the creator god, and the sun god, supreme beings who shaped the beliefs of an entire empire. Beyond that, surrounding the camel remains, scientists also found a range of familiar offerings: bird feathers, guinea pigs, corn cakes, and lima beans. These were all commonly used in major sacrificial ceremonies. This suggests that the event was not an isolated act, but part of a large-scale ritual gathering where people came together, shared food, and performed ceremonies to strengthen social bonds. In other words, this was not just about religion. Rituals like these also served as a form of political power for the Inca. By organizing sacrifices and communal feasts, they not only expressed devotion to their gods, but also reinforced their authority, built alliances, and maintained control over conquered territories. What surprised scientists the most is that in over 100 years of studying the Inca Empire, there had never been evidence of a camelid sacrifice ritual quite like this. That makes this discovery extremely rare, offering an entirely new perspective on both the spiritual and political life of the Inca. According to analysis, these rituals likely took place around the year 1500, near the final period of the Inca Empire, when it stood at the height of its power, yet was on the brink of major historical upheaval. So imagine this. If you were standing there 500 years ago, witnessing that ceremony, watching those beautifully adorned animals slowly being buried, would you see it as a sacred ritual or something that sends a chill down your spine? Don't hesitate to share your thoughts in the comments below. 14,000-year-old horse fossil discovered while digging a backyard swimming pool. It all happened on May 2nd, a day that started like any other. Workers began digging in the backyard to prepare for the construction of a swimming pool, a very common project in a hot place like Nevada. But after just a few scoops of earth, large bones suddenly appeared beneath the dry soil. At first, no one jumped to conclusions, but an uneasy feeling began to creep in. Just imagine yourself in that situation, standing in your own backyard and suddenly seeing bones emerging from the ground. Would you stay calm? The Perkins family couldn't. Instead of going closer to inspect the remains, they immediately called the police. When officers arrived, it took only a few minutes of inspection for them to reach a conclusion that left everyone both relieved and curious. These were not human remains. The reason was clear. The bones were far too large to belong to a human. But if not human, then what were they? That question led the homeowner, Matt Perkins, to seek expert help. They quickly contacted Joshua Bonde, a paleontologist working at the Nevada Science Center. When Bonde arrived and began examining the site, he immediately realized this was no ordinary find. Before long, he confirmed that the skeleton belonged to a prehistoric horse. Even that alone sounds historic, but what truly caught scientists' attention was the condition of the skeleton. From the shoulder bones to the legs and parts of the spine, nothing had been disturbed. Everything remained in its original position, even still connected as if the animal had only just died. This is extremely rare. Normally, after an animal dies, scavengers scatter the remains, but in this case, that hadn't happened. According to Bondi, there is only one likely explanation. The horse was buried very quickly before any scavengers could reach it. It may have been sudden mud, flooding, or some natural event that essentially froze that moment in time, preserving the skeleton intact for thousands of years. And the discovery didn't stop there. As they continued digging deeper, about 4 to 5 feet underground, the workers and researchers uncovered more bones, including parts of the jaw, rib cage, and additional vertebrae from soil taken out of the pool area, which was about 6.5 feet deep. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together, revealing a creature that lived in a time long before modern humans inhabited the region. Initial analysis suggests that this horse lived during the Ice Age, somewhere between 6,000 and 14,000 years ago. Back then, the area we now know as Las Vegas was not the dry desert you see today. It was once a vast wetland, home to many extinct giants such as mammoths, saber-toothed cats, ancient camels, and prehistoric wolves. To determine the fossil's exact age, bone samples will be sent to the U.S. Geological Survey for further analysis. But regardless of the final results, this discovery alone is enough to make anyone rethink the ground they're standing on. Wouldn't you agree? What's even more remarkable is what the Perkins family chose to do next. Instead of continuing construction as planned, they decided to pause building the pool. They chose to give scientists the space to fully excavate and study the site. Not only that, they also plan to donate the entire fossil to the Nevada Science Center for public display and education. It's not a decision everyone would make, because sometimes the value of the past is far greater than the comforts of the present. Isn't that incredible? 3,500-year-old metal hand found in an ancient tomb in Switzerland. Have you ever imagined that in the middle of a quiet field, where there's nothing but dirt, rocks, and grass, there could be a hidden secret capable of leaving the entire archaeological world stunned? What's even more surprising is that this mystery began with a group of amateur treasure hunters carrying metal detectors. If you haven't, then let's rewind to a day in October 2017. On that day, near Lake Biel in the canton of Bern, Switzerland, a group of hobbyists was scanning the ground as they had done many times before. After hours of finding nothing unusual, the signal from their metal detector suddenly changed. At first, they assumed it was just a coin or some ordinary artifact, but when they dug deeper, what emerged was not a coin or a typical object, but an ancient bronze hand, wearing a thin gold bracelet around its wrist. The hand was slightly smaller than a real human hand, yet it was crafted with remarkable precision. What stood out most was that the wrist was hollow inside, as if it had once been attached to something else. This detail immediately sparked a wave of speculation among experts. Was it a prosthetic, part of a statue, or perhaps an object used in some kind of spiritual ritual? And that wasn't all. At the same discovery site, the group also found a bronze dagger and several rib bones. When these items were brought to the Bern historical and Roman archaeological authorities, the experts' first reaction was confusion. They admitted they had never seen anything quite like it before. To determine its age, researchers analyzed the adhesive used to attach the gold to the wrist. The results showed it dated back to around 1500 to 1400 BC, placing it firmly in the Bronze Age. This timeline also matched the age of the dagger found nearby. The more they studied it, the clearer it became that this was no random discovery. So in the spring of the following year, 2018, archaeologists returned to the area to search for more clues. And just as expected, they uncovered an ancient grave near the village of Prel, not far from Lake Biel. Although the grave had been largely disturbed, several key pieces of evidence remained. The skeleton of an adult man, a spiral-shaped bronze hairpin, and tiny fragments of gold, perfectly matching the missing pieces from the gold bracelet on the metal hand. Beneath the grave was a small stone structure dating back to ancient times. It appeared that the owner of the bronze hand had intentionally placed it there. According to archaeologists, the hand had been deliberately positioned as part of a meaningful arrangement. So who was this man? Based on the findings, experts believe he was no ordinary individual. The gold-adorned hand was not just decorative, it symbolized power. In that era, gold was extremely rare, reserved only for elite members of society, possibly leaders or figures with spiritual significance. Because of this, an intriguing theory has emerged. The hand may not simply represent a human body part, but could carry symbolic meaning, perhaps even connected to deities or sacred rituals. And do you know what makes this discovery even more extraordinary? Until now, no metal artifact shaped like a human body part had ever been found in ancient Central Europe. In other words, this object is nearly one of a kind. Today, the bronze hand is displayed at the Biel Museum, yet its true purpose remains a mystery. So what do you think? Was it part of a prosthetic limb, a symbol of power, or a sacred object used in ancient rituals? The 260-day calendar of the ancient Maya civilization. You know, in the world of archaeology, there are often tiny traces that may seem meaningless, yet they can completely change how we understand an entire civilization. And this time, it's exactly that kind of story, all beginning with a few broken stone fragments lying quietly within an ancient site deep in the jungles of Guatemala. At the San Bartolo site in northern Guatemala, archaeologists excavated an ancient wall inside the Las Pinturas pyramid. During their research, they came across small fragments that, at first glance, didn't seem remarkable, but when the pieces were assembled and carefully analyzed, a strange symbol gradually emerged, shaped like a deer's head, with 2 dots and a single line above it. It sounds simple, but this very symbol captured the attention of scientists. According to experts, it is one of the earliest known glyphs of the famous 260-day Maya calendar, known as the Tzolk'in. Its age has been dated to around 200 to 300 BC, more than 2,000 years ago. At a time when many other civilizations were still struggling with basic recording systems, the Maya had already developed such a complex calendar. The symbol is believed to represent the day 7 Manik, meaning 7 deer in the ancient Maya language. But the significance goes beyond a single day. It provides evidence that the Maya had developed a fully functional writing system very early on. Not only did it include visual symbols, but also phonetic elements, a major milestone in the evolution of written language. This discovery led researchers like Dmitry Belyaev to emphasize that we may have underestimated the sophistication of early Maya civilization. So what makes the Tzolk'in calendar so unique? Unlike many ancient calendars that are based on the movements of the sun, moon, or stars, the Tzolk'in is believed to be purely mathematical in origin. It consists of 260 days, created by combining 20-day names with 13 numbers, a system that is remarkably logical when you think about it. What's even more fascinating is that this calendar didn't just exist in the past. To this day, some indigenous Maya communities still use the Tzolk'in in their rituals and spiritual life. In other words, it's not just a way of measuring time, it's a living part of their cultural identity. And when it comes to the Maya, you probably already know, they were once one of the most brilliant civilizations in human history. They flourished across southern Mexico and Central America, leaving behind monumental architecture, advanced knowledge of astronomy and mathematics, and rich artistic traditions. As early as around 2000 BC, the Maya began laying the foundations of their society. By the early centuries AD, they had formed numerous independent city-states and reached remarkable levels of prosperity. But then, something strange happened. One by one, Maya cities and kingdoms declined and mysteriously disappeared around the 10th century. There was no clear explanation, no definitive evidence of a massive war, just an almost complete vanishing. Only a few communities managed to survive longer, especially in the Yucatan Peninsula, before eventually falling in the 16th century during the Spanish conquest. And now, thousands of years later, those small stone fragments are speaking again, telling the story of a civilization that once stood at the peak of knowledge. So what do you think? A calendar not based on astronomy, yet lasting for thousands of years? Was it purely mathematics, or does it hide deeper knowledge that modern humanity has yet to fully understand? If you have any thoughts, feel free to share them in the comments below so we can discuss together. Ancient remains reveal our mermaid-like ancestors. My friend, have you ever wondered what our ancestors were really like? Were they simply land-based hunters, or did they do things that still seem almost unbelievable today? If you've ever asked yourself that question but never found a clear answer, then let's take a look at what scientists have discovered. A research team led by Professor Eric Trinkhaus, an anthropologist at Washington University in St. Louis, analyzed 77 ancient skeletons. Among them were 23 Neanderthals, are close human relatives who lived between 30,000 and 50,000 years ago before going extinct. At first, everything seemed normal, until the researchers noticed something very unusual. About half of the Neanderthal skeletons showed signs of a condition known as surfer's ear. This condition, also called external auditory exostosis, EAE, involves abnormal bone growth in the ear canal. In modern humans, it typically appears in people who are frequently exposed to cold, wet, and windy environments, such as surfers, kayakers, or those who spend long periods in the water. So the big question is, why would such a trait appear in Neanderthals, people we once believed lived mostly in caves and hunted on land? According to researchers, this suggests a completely different possibility. Neanderthals may have spent a significant amount of time in the water. They were not just land hunters. They may also have been skilled divers, regularly entering cold seas or rivers in search of food. Hearing this, does your image of them begin to change? They were not simply rough, primitive humans chasing mammoths across open plains, but highly adaptable beings, capable of surviving in harsh environments, and possibly even hunting underwater. This discovery also reshapes our understanding of their diet. In the past, scientists believed Neanderthals mainly consumed large land animals, but now it seems they may have also relied on marine food sources, making them more similar to modern humans than previously thought. Not only that, this trait suggests they could survive in colder and wetter environments than scientists once assumed. But the story doesn't end there. Even though Neanderthals went extinct long ago, they didn't completely disappear from history. In recent years, genetic studies have shown that there were multiple instances of interbreeding between Homo sapiens, modern humans, and Neanderthals. In other words, a part of them still lives on within you. Interestingly, people in Northern Europe tend to carry higher amounts of Neanderthal DNA, which may contribute to stronger immune responses against certain diseases. Some scientists even suggest that Neanderthals may have been physically stronger and more robust than modern humans. From just a small detail in the structure of the ear bones, an entirely new picture of our ancestors' way of life begins to emerge. Very different from what we once imagined. Scientists truly are remarkable, aren't they? So if one day science proves that our ancestors really did dive deep into the water to survive, would you still look at human history the same way? As for me, I've already started to see things differently, but exactly how different? Well, perhaps we'll need more time and more discoveries like this before we can fully understand the truth. 28 mysterious skeletons reveal a tragedy sparked by a children's game. What would you think if I told you that some tragedies begin with the smallest, most unexpected things? A simple game, a moment of impulse, or an accidental act, and suddenly, everything spirals out of control. It sounds hard to believe, doesn't it? But this is a real story that took place in the ancient town of Elongated in Alaska, USA. Here, a research team led by archaeologists Rick Knecht and Charlotta Hillerdahl from the University of Aberdeen, Scotland, discovered a mass grave containing 28 skeletons dating back around 350 years. At first, it seemed like a typical archaeological find, but as they dug deeper, they realized this was no ordinary burial. It was the physical evidence of a tragedy long preserved in the oral traditions of the Yupik people. The story begins with a simple dart game between two children. In an unfortunate moment, one boy accidentally blinded the other. But instead of ending there, the situation escalated when the injured child's father sought revenge. He blinded both eyes of the other boy. At this point, you can probably sense things starting to go terribly wrong. From that single act of retaliation, a cycle of violence began. The victim's relatives struck back. Then came more revenge, and more again. What started as a personal conflict between two families quickly escalated into a larger feud, eventually engulfing the entire community. Attacks involving darts and bows became increasingly common, turning a child's game into a real and deadly conflict. In the end, the flames of hatred spread across regions of Alaska and Yukon. The 28 skeletons discovered are believed to be the final victims of that tragic chain of events. What deeply disturbed archaeologists was not just the number of victims, but their condition. The remains showed that the victims had been bound with grass ropes before being executed and burned. Some even bore signs of post-mortem violence. For example, one skeleton had a puncture wound through the back of the skull, likely from a spear or arrow. But perhaps the most heartbreaking detail is that most of the victims were women and children. Only one skeleton belonged to a man of fighting age. This suggests that the men may have already been killed in earlier ambushes or battles, leaving behind the most vulnerable, who then became the final targets. According to archaeologist Rick Knecht, this conflict took place during the period known as the Little Ice Age, a time of harsh climate conditions that led to food shortages. When resources become scarce, even the smallest conflict can erupt into disaster. Beyond the skeletons, researchers also uncovered more than 60,000 artifacts, remarkably well preserved by permafrost. These included dolls, ceremonial masks, small figurines, and grass-woven baskets, items once part of everyday life for the people who lived there. These objects may seem simple, but they tell a very different story. A peaceful life that existed before everything was consumed by violence. Just think about it. How could something as innocent as a children's game lead to such devastation? It almost seems unreal, doesn't it? It goes to show that sometimes the most dangerous force isn't a weapon, but revenge without an end. So if you had lived in that time, watching the conflict escalate day by day, would you have tried to stop it from the beginning? Or would you have been pulled into a cycle no one could escape? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. 7,000-year-old skeleton, buried in a strange position in Germany. Some archaeological discoveries make people pause for a few seconds, not because they are grand, but because they are simply unusual. And the skeleton found in northeastern Germany is exactly such a case, a burial method never before recorded in Europe. The story begins in a Mesolithic site near the village of Großfredenwalde in northeastern Germany. There, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a man dating back around 7,000 years, buried in a highly unusual position. Instead of being laid to rest horizontally, as is typical, the man was placed into a deep vertical pit, over 5 feet deep, almost like a small well dug specifically for burial. His body was kept upright by filling sand up to his knees, creating a natural support to prevent him from falling over. The upper part of the skeleton had been damaged over time, but the remaining structure was enough for researchers to determine that this was not an accident or a random occurrence. Everything suggests it was a deliberate burial practice. The site itself dates back about 8,500 years to the Mesolithic period, a time when people in Europe primarily survived through hunting, gathering, and fishing. They were highly mobile and rarely settled in one place for long. For that reason, the existence of an organized burial site here is already remarkable, let alone such a unique burial method. According to Thomas Terberger, the lead archaeologist of the excavation, this is one of the oldest cemeteries ever discovered in Central Europe. And among all the skeletons found at the site, only this man was buried in an upright position, making him a mysterious exception. This raises an important question. Why bury someone this way? Researchers still don't have a definitive answer. However, based on the arrangement of the bones and the structure of the burial pit, they believe the body was placed there carefully, possibly as part of a ritual or connected to the spiritual beliefs of the community at the time. Of course, this wasn't the only discovery at the site. In total, experts uncovered 9 skeletons, including 5 children over the age of 6. Notably, the remains of an infant dating back about 8,400 years were found with its arms folded across the chest, a detail suggesting care and symbolic meaning in the burial process. These findings show that even in such a distant and challenging time, humans already practiced meaningful burial rituals. They didn't just bury the dead, they expressed beliefs, emotions, and their understanding of death. Returning to the man buried upright, perhaps he held a special status within his community. Or maybe his death was unusual, requiring a different kind of ritual. Or perhaps, more simply, people at the time believed the soul needed to stand in order to pass into the afterlife. Whatever the reason, this discovery raises more questions than answers. And sometimes, it's precisely those unanswered mysteries that make history so fascinating, don't you think? 97. Deformed skeletons in a 215 square feet house reveal a 5,000-year-old epidemic in China. In an ancient village in northern China, archaeologists encountered a scene that looked like a tragedy frozen in time. The discovery of 97 skeletons piled together inside a small house of only about 215 square feet. Such a confined space, yet it held nearly 100 skeletons of all ages, from children and teenagers to the elderly. What does that tell you? Doesn't it suggest that this was not an ordinary burial site, but the aftermath of a catastrophic event that occurred around 5,000 years ago? Through analysis, scientists concluded that all of these individuals were residents of the very same village. They were not brought in from elsewhere. They were people who had lived, worked, and likely endured their final desperate days together. So what happened? The most widely accepted theory among experts is that this was the result of an ancient epidemic, possibly similar to the plague. At a time when medicine did not yet exist, once disease broke out, people had virtually no way to control or treat it. As villagers began falling ill in large numbers, fear likely spread even faster than the disease itself. To prevent further infection, they may have placed the bodies inside a single house as a form of isolation from the rest of the community. But as the death toll continued to rise, that small house gradually became a place filled with bodies. Inside, the scene becomes even more haunting. The skeletons on the northern side of the house were relatively intact, as if they had been carefully placed. But on the southern side, everything was completely different. Bones were scattered and piled on top of one another in layers, forming a chaotic mass. This suggests that at first, there may have been some order. But as the number of deaths exceeded their ability to manage, everything turned rushed and chaotic. And that's not all. In one corner of the house, archaeologists also found signs of burning. It's possible that a fire broke out, causing wooden beams to collapse, further deforming and disturbing the skeletons beneath. This village is part of the Hamen Manga site, one of the largest and best preserved archaeological sites ever discovered in China. Beyond the skeletons, researchers also uncovered numerous artifacts, including farming tools, pottery, and hunting weapons. These findings reveal that before the disaster, this had been a stable and organized community, with a relatively developed and sustainable way of life. But all it took was a single epidemic, and everything collapsed in a short period of time. 97 people, 97 lives, gathered into one small space, not by choice, but by circumstance. It's truly heartbreaking, isn't it? 60,000-year-old fossilized mammoth skeleton. Just imagine an ordinary workday, an excavator humming steadily, dirt being moved like any other day, and then a sudden clink beneath the bucket changes everything in an instant. Not rock, not metal, but something pale, curved, and slowly emerging from deep within the soil. If you were there, what would you think you had just uncovered? As for the excavators, what they discovered left them absolutely thrilled. A fossilized mammoth skeleton estimated to be 60,000 years old. The story began when Mr. McEwen and his grandson, Ethan Beasley, were using an excavator to dig on their family's commercial property. It seemed like a routine job, progressing just like any other day, until the machine suddenly struck something unusually hard beneath the ground. At first, they probably assumed it was just a large rock or a thick tree root, but as more soil was cleared away, what appeared made them freeze in place, a massive tusk measuring about 6 feet long. Just imagine that moment. You're digging normally, and suddenly a giant tooth emerges from the earth. What would that feel like? Realizing this was no ordinary object, the family immediately contacted paleontology experts. Once the scientists arrived, the truth slowly came to light. It wasn't just a tusk, it was an almost complete fossil skeleton of a mammoth, a species that went extinct tens of thousands of years ago. According to experts, the skeleton dates back around 60,000 years and belonged to a female mammoth. It wasn't particularly large compared to others of its kind, standing about 9 feet tall, smaller than many specimens previously discovered. But what makes this find truly remarkable is not just its age, it's the incredible level of preservation. The skull remains clearly visible. The ribs and lower jaw have retained much of their original structure. Only a few leg bones are missing or damaged due to the passage of time. This is extremely rare, as most fossils are scattered or destroyed over tens of thousands of years. Did you know that for a skeleton to remain in such condition, the animal must have been buried very quickly after death, before scavengers or environmental factors could break it down? That means the very land this family owns was once the resting place of a massive Ice Age creature. After completing the excavation, the McEwen family made a decision that earned deep respect from the scientific community. They donated the entire fossil skeleton to the Peru Museum in Texas. It may sound simple, but think about it. A fossil like this could easily be sold for a very high price at auction. If that had happened, it might have ended up in the hands of private collectors, depriving scientists of the chance to study and learn more about this ancient species. By choosing to donate it, the family not only helped preserve the specimen, but also opened the door for researchers to continue uncovering secrets from Earth's distant past. A random touch that connects the present to 60,000 years ago. What could be more incredible than that? The most terrifying imperial tomb in China and its deadly curse. When it comes to famous archaeological stories in China, most people immediately think of spectacular discoveries like the tomb of Qin Shi Huang or the Terracotta Army. But if you believe it's all just dust and priceless treasures, then the story of Dingling, the resting place of the Wanli Emperor, will send a chill down your spine. This is not simply an imperial tomb filled with valuable artifacts like many others. It is considered one of the most dangerous and haunting tombs ever discovered by Chinese archaeologists. It all began in 1955, when an archaeological team led by Guo Moruo set out to open Dingling. They were young, passionate, but inexperienced, and none of them could have imagined that this excavation would become a terrifying ordeal, the kind that might make your hair stand on end. For those unfamiliar, Dingling, also known as the Ming Dingling Mausoleum, had existed for over 300 years. It is the burial site of the Wanli Emperor, who reportedly spent 6 years and more than 8 million taels of gold to construct it. Compared to other Ming imperial tombs, its scale is not the largest, but everything inside was arranged with extraordinary precision, causing no small amount of difficulty for the excavation team. It took them more than a year and a half just to locate the entrance to the underground palace. But even then, the entrance was blocked by a massive wall, about 29 feet high and over 5 feet thick. And before they could even catch their breath, they were confronted with eerie rumors from local villagers, stories of a river flowing inside the tomb, of having to cross a bottomless abyss by boat to reach the emperor's coffin, surrounded by countless sharp blades, and that only someone born on the same date as the emperor would be allowed to enter. Do you believe that? The archaeologists certainly didn't, but even they couldn't help feeling a chill run down their spines after hearing such tales. Despite everything, Guo Moruo's team pressed on, ignoring superstition and carefully proceeding step by step. After months of relentless effort, they finally reached the main burial chamber, the room where the emperor's coffin rested. At the center stood 3 striking red coffins. The one in the middle belonged to the Wanli Emperor, while the 2 on either side were for his empresses. When they opened the coffins, their eyes lit up at the sight of countless rare treasures, most notably a dragon crown adorned with more than 120 gemstones, 5,000 pearls, and crafted entirely with gold thread. Just imagining it is dazzling, isn't it? But that excitement was quickly overshadowed by a series of strange tragedies. Due to the limited preservation techniques of the time, many artifacts were damaged, and the emperor's wooden coffin was left abandoned near a mountain ravine. Later, 7 villagers, upon hearing about it, took pieces of the precious wood for themselves. Unbeknownst to them, these pieces seemed to carry a curse. One person who used the wood to build a coffin died. Another who placed it on an altar saw misfortune befall their children. Even more chilling, tragedy began to strike those directly involved in the excavation. Guo Moruo's wife took her own life, and his 2 sons also died. Then, Zheng Zhenduo, the excavation commander, perished in a plane crash. Wu Han, the key advocate for the excavation, later committed suicide. Finally, the photographer who opened the coffin lid was said to have hanged himself. It was as if the moment the underground palace was opened, the curse of the Wanli Emperor had been unleashed. From that point on, the excavation of imperial tombs in China became an unspoken taboo. No one dared to open them recklessly again. The treasures may be of immense value, but the fear and haunting legacy left behind by Dingling are beyond any price. So if one day you hear someone say, "Why not open ancient tombs? There must be gold inside," remember the story of Dingling. Because this place is not just a treasure trove, it is a reminder that sometimes human curiosity can awaken something far more terrifying, a deadly curse. The 3,000-year-old tomb of the priest of Paco Ampati, Peru. Have you ever imagined that, in the dry highlands of northern Peru, there exists a tomb that, at first glance, would leave you both in awe and shrugging in fascination at its incredibly intriguing mysteries? Recently, archaeologists uncovered such a tomb, dating back about 3,000 years. What truly astonished them wasn't its age, but the unique burial style of the individual laid to rest there. The remains were named the priest of Pacoampadi, after the highland region where the tomb was discovered. And from the very first layer, it was clear, this was no ordinary person. He was buried beneath 6 layers of ash mixed with dark soil, surrounded by finely decorated ceramic bowls. His body also bore ritualistic stamps featuring ancient symbolic patterns. In other words, by today's standards, you could call him an ancient VIP, honored with burial rites reserved only for the elite of society. But what made archaeologists both intrigued and puzzled were 2 special seals placed along the upper edge of the tomb. One seal depicted a human face facing east, while the other showed a jaguar facing west. Could it be that the ancients were trying to say, face east to awaken, face west to feast? Of course, that's just a joke, but the arrangement was certainly not random. It likely carried deep ritualistic or spiritual meaning that may take years for us to fully understand. Archaeologist Yuji Seki, who led the project, noted that the tomb itself had unusually distinctive dimensions, about 6.5 feet in diameter and roughly 3.3 feet deep. But even more striking was the burial position, which left experts scratching their heads. The body was placed face down, with the feet crossed, an extremely rare posture, unlike most other burials in the region. It almost feels as if the priest of Pacoampadi wanted to ensure, I'll rest here comfortably, but still maintain my authority. The most fascinating detail, however, was a tupu, a large pin traditionally used to fasten cloaks in Andean culture. Typically, tupu were accessories worn by women, yet the individual in this tomb was male. This suggests he wasn't just an ancient VIP, but perhaps also a kind of fashion icon of his time, boldly defying social norms of dress and power. Honestly, if he were alive today, he might be someone who stays thousands of years ahead of the trends. Looking at the tomb as a whole, from the 6 layers of ash and ceramic vessels to the symbolic seals and the tupu, it tells a compelling story of power, belief, and even ancient fashion. This is not merely a burial site, but a living museum, where every detail opens up new mysteries and makes us wonder, who was this priest really? And what was he thinking when he chose every element of his burial ritual? So what do you think? If the priest of Pacoampadi lived in the 21st century, would he be a powerful religious leader or a style influencer with millions of followers? The answer may still lie buried beneath those layers of ash, but one thing is certain. This tomb will leave anyone interested in history, culture, or ancient fashion absolutely amazed. Xiongnu Noble Tomb that has hidden a shocking secret for over 2 millennia. If one day someone told you that, in the vast Mongolian steppes, where only the howling wind and echoes of ancient horse hooves remain, there exists a tomb that has preserved its secrets for more than 2,000 years. Would you believe it? It sounds like something out of a movie, but in reality, archaeologists have uncovered exactly such a time portal. And what left everyone quietly stunned, while still trying to maintain their professional composure, were 2 extraordinarily unusual silver dragons lying deep inside the tomb. The story begins in northern Mongolia, a region once known as the homeland of the Xiongnu, a nomadic people famous for being both fierce warriors and deeply mysterious. When a joint Chinese-Mongolian archaeological team began excavating the site, they expected to find only a few pottery fragments or minor artifacts. Instead, they uncovered a noble tomb dating back to around 25 AD, so ancient that if it could speak, it might have retired long ago. What made it even more surprising was that upon opening the tomb, the team felt as though they had stepped into a fully stocked ancient general store. There were jade belt hooks, finely crafted jewelry, wooden cups, horse bridles, even a chariot and various weapons. Just from these items alone, it was clear that the tomb's owner was no ordinary person, but a wealthy noble who carried his entire fortune, even into the afterlife, to display his status. But do you know what stood out the most? While the team was busy cataloging and classifying the artifacts, they noticed 2 gleaming objects resting quietly in a corner of the tomb. As they brushed away the dust of time, what emerged were 2 silver dragon statues, gilded with gold and shining as if they had been polished just yesterday. At that moment, even the most composed archaeologists couldn't help but gasp in amazement. In East Asian culture, dragons are the ultimate symbol of power, And to possess two silver dragons crafted with such intricate detail, from the horns and eyes to the teeth and feather-like features, the owner must not only have been wealthy, but also held an exceptionally high status. You see, the Xiongnu were nomadic people, known for horseback riding and archery. Many assume they did not place much importance on refined artistic objects like these, yet these two dragons prove the opposite. This was a culture that was not only powerful on the battlefield, but also possessed remarkable aesthetic sensibility and advanced metalworking skills. In fact, archaeologists suggest that these dragon statues may be key evidence of the Xiongnu's extensive cultural exchanges with neighboring civilizations. They may have interacted with Chinese culture, or even absorbed artistic influences from more distant regions. Every carved detail seems to whisper, "We were not only feared warriors, we were artists as well." And so, from what began as a routine excavation, the team uncovered an entire story, one of history, culture, and the creative brilliance of a people who once shook the steppes. Truly fascinating, isn't it? 3,000-year-old burial mound in northern Serbia containing powerful remains. Did you know that some archaeological discoveries are so striking, just hearing about them can give you goosebumps? The story of unusually tall skeletons coated in a deep red pigment found in ancient burial mounds in northern Serbia is definitely one of them. The story began when scientists set out to excavate two burial mounds dating back nearly 3,000 years in this region. What they didn't expect was that they were about to uncover a mystery, both strange and imbued with a sense of sacredness that's hard to describe. These two mounds were studied by a team of researchers from the Institute of Archaeology and Ethnology of the Polish Academy of Sciences, known as IAEPAN. From the very first glance, they stood out compared to other nearby mounds. Each mound measured up to about 130 feet in diameter and stood roughly 10 to 13 feet tall, constructed using wood, an indication of the significant effort invested and the high status of those buried within. As researchers explored deeper into the internal structure, they discovered that each mound contained a fairly extensive burial chamber system. Multiple bodies were interred there, with the earliest remains dating back around 2,900 to 3,000 years ago. Notably, about 100 to 200 years later, the site was reused for another phase of burials, suggesting that these mounds held special significance across generations. At first glance, the number of grave goods was not as abundant as one might expect from elite burials. But don't be too quick to underestimate them. The sheer scale of the mounds, their location, and the method of construction all strongly indicate that those buried here belong to a high-ranking aristocratic class with considerable power and influence in the region. However, what truly stunned the research team lay in the skeletons themselves. Some male remains in the two mounds were unusually large in size and, most strikingly, covered in a red pigment. Analysis revealed that this color was not natural but came from ochre, a substance that had been sprinkled or applied to the bodies after death. According to Dr. Piotr Włodarczak of IAEPAN, as far back as 5,000 years ago, red ochre was regarded by many communities as a symbol of power, sacredness, and a connection to the spiritual world. Applying it to the deceased was not just a standard burial practice, but a special honor reserved for individuals of exceptional status. But that's not all. The height of these men was truly astonishing. They were all over 5 feet 11 inches tall, while the average local male in Serbia at that time stood at only about 5 feet 3 inches. In the context of thousands of years ago, this difference would have made them seem like giants compared to the surrounding population. It is precisely this combination of ochre burial rituals and exceptional physical stature that has led to a fascinating hypothesis. The individuals buried in these two mounds may have been migrants. Experts suggest that the use of ochre was more commonly associated with communities from the Eastern European steppes, rather than the local Serbian population of that era. So who were they really? Powerful leaders from distant lands, steppe warriors, or an elite class that brought with them their own beliefs and rituals? The answer likely still lies buried deep underground, waiting for further excavations and research. But one thing is certain, these red giants have left a powerful mark, forcing us to reconsider ancient European history from an entirely new perspective. What do you think? Do you have a different theory? Let me know in the comments below. Ancient tomb, containing a fragrant coffin that astonished experts. At a construction site in Dangshan County, Anhui Province, China, an excavator operator accidentally uncovered an unusually large ancient tomb buried about 13 feet underground. The site supervisor immediately halted construction and reported the discovery to local authorities. Soon after, an archaeological team was dispatched. They sealed off the entire area and began excavating the mysterious tomb. Beneath the layers of soil, experts discovered two coffins, labeled Coffin Number 1 and Coffin Number 2. Coffin Number 1 was relatively simple, containing very few burial items, and the body inside had long since decomposed. However, Coffin Number 2 was far more remarkable. It was sealed beneath a thick layer of dense yellow clay about 12 inches thick, making it extremely difficult to open. This coffin featured a double outer casing. The outer shell, coated in a bronze-colored lacquer, was crafted from cypress wood resistant to decay and termites, and the layers were separated by a 16-inch thick layer of lime. Inside was a deep red inner coffin made from nanmu wood, a tree species native to China. The coffin measured approximately 95 inches long, 28 inches wide, and 30 inches tall. What shocked everyone was that when the coffin was opened, a distinct fragrance spread into the surrounding air. Even more astonishing, inside lay the well-preserved body of a woman dressed in Qing Dynasty attire, as if she had been buried only recently. The woman had black hair tied neatly in a bun. Her muscles remained full and flexible, and even her joints could still move. Such a perfectly preserved body is extremely rare in the history of Chinese archaeology. Data from Colossal indicates that the mummy was about 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighed around 97 pounds. She had a slender figure, an oval-shaped face, bound feet known as 3-inch golden lotuses, and red-painted fingernails and toenails. Experts believe she was around 30 years old at the time of her burial and must have been an exceptionally beautiful woman of the Qing Dynasty. However, upon closer inspection, a deep T-shaped cut was found on her neck, likely caused by a sword. This was the only wound on her body, suggesting that she did not resist when the fatal strike occurred. It is possible that she had committed a serious crime and was executed. This wound was identified as the cause of death and serves as a key piece of evidence in uncovering the true identity of the tomb's occupant. The burial goods interred with this Qing Dynasty beauty were extremely rich, including gold and silver jewelry, gemstone bead necklaces, and even coins from the reign of the Kangxi Emperor. However, no inscription or epitaph was found in the tomb, making it very difficult for experts to determine exactly who she was. As a result, to this day, her identity and the full story behind this tomb remains an unsolved mystery. Ancient Siberian King's Tomb, containing the remains of a mysterious woman and an enormous treasure of gold. In the so-called Valley of the Kings, not in Egypt as we often hear, but in the Valley of the Kings of the ancient Scythians, deep within Siberian territory, archaeologists have recently discovered the tomb of a Scythian king. The tomb was constructed with remarkable sophistication and contained a vast array of valuable artifacts, including gold, silver, and intricate jewelry. Yet what astonished scientists the most was the presence of a young woman buried alongside the king. This woman was not only laid to rest beside the king's remains, but she was also surrounded by an abundance of gold and jewelry, clear signs that she was no ordinary individual. Her burial position and the high-quality grave goods strongly suggest that she held a very high status, possibly the king's primary wife or his most favored consort. However, the mystery lies in one unsettling detail. No one knows how she died. While analysis of the king's remains indicates that he died of prostate cancer, a natural cause of death in ancient times, the woman's body shows no clear signs pointing to a cause of death. There is no evidence of violence or disease. It appears to have been a sudden and unexplained death. Archaeologists suspect that she may have been poisoned as part of an ancient funerary ritual intended to allow her to accompany the king into the afterlife. This theory becomes even more chilling with the discovery of 35 additional sets of human remains within the tomb complex, believed to be members of the king's retinue. Among them were men, women, children, and even 14 horses, forming a procession that resembles a royal court. These findings closely align with the accounts of the ancient Greek historian Herodotus, who described Scythian burial customs in which, upon a king's death, loyal attendants, including family members, servants, and horses, were sacrificed to follow their ruler into the next world. Did the young woman know her fate beforehand? Or was she an unwilling victim of a brutal ritual practiced by a culture that once dominated the vast Asian steppes? That question remains unanswered. But with each layer of earth removed and every artifact uncovered, we move closer to the truth, even if that truth sometimes sends a chill down our spine. The ancient tomb with a terrifying curse. Tablet. Have you ever imagined that beneath the ground of an old hospital in the heart of France, there could lie a mysterious cemetery dating back to Roman times? And within that quiet soil, there exist cursed tablets, thin lead charms inscribed in a language that has completely vanished from the world? What I'm talking about is one of the most extraordinary archaeological discoveries of the year, where thousands of years of history suddenly come alive right beneath a structure that seemed entirely unrelated, an 18th century hospital in Orléans, about 75 miles southwest of Paris. During renovations of the historic hospital, archaeologists unexpectedly unearthed more than 60 graves aligned along an ancient wall. The coffins were painted wooden boxes, many still faintly retaining their original colors, with no signs of cremation. This suggested to experts that this was no ordinary cemetery. According to the Orléans Archaeological Service, the team in charge of the excavation, the individuals buried here may have belonged to a specific social group, such as people of the same occupation or a particular social class. But the strangest discovery came from within 21 of these graves. 21 curse tablets, also known as deficciones. These were thin lead sheets, roughly the size of a human palm, engraved with inscriptions, rolled up, pierced with nails, and buried with the dead. Yet these tablets were far more than simple grave goods. In the ancient Roman world, they were used to communicate with the gods, to call down punishment on enemies, or to grant favors to the owner. Each tablet carried a curse, a hope, or a grievance sent to the world beyond. One particularly notable grave belonged to a man buried with a curse tablet placed between his legs, accompanied by a broken vase and several coins, a ritual likely intended to guide the soul to the afterlife. Once recovered, the tablet was sent to a conservation lab, where experts used reflective transformation imaging, a modern technique that produces clear images from eroded surfaces. And then the miracle happened. The researchers discovered that the inscriptions were written in Gaulish, a branch of the Celtic language that has completely died out. In fact, after the Roman conquest, Gaulish was still spoken locally but rarely written, making every remaining line a priceless linguistic treasure for modern scholars. Imagine, a person living 2,000 years ago in despair inscribed their final words in a fading native language on a fragile lead sheet and buried it with their death, as a message to the gods, or perhaps as a warning to future generations. This discovery not only provides crucial insight into the Gaulish language, but also offers a new perspective on the spiritual and religious life of the local population under Roman rule. They were not entirely assimilated. Quietly, they preserved their identity and language through these secretive rituals. The Orléans excavation is expected to conclude by the end of the month. All artifacts, from the cursed tablets and coins to fragments of pottery and coffin dust, will undergo thorough laboratory analysis. Scientists hope these studies will uncover even more secrets about the cursed individuals and reveal the deeper story buried beneath the silent earth, a cemetery hidden for millennia, curses written in a vanished language. Secrets long buried are now slowly being revealed. Have we truly understood the past, or have we only glimpsed the tip of the iceberg? That remains a challenging question, one that archaeologists continue to explore with hope for even more breakthroughs in the future. The most unusual Grand Eunuch, tomb in China. Have you ever imagined what the life and death might have been like for someone who silently wielded power in the Forbidden City, a grand palace of China spanning 4 reigns of the Qing Dynasty? Surely you're curious. The story I'm about to share is about Li Lianying, a eunuch deeply favored by Empress Dowager Cixi, who held an extraordinary position within the imperial court. Yet, the details of his life and death remain shrouded in an unresolved mystery. It all began in the summer of 1966 in the Haidian district of Beijing, China, when a group of people accidentally discovered an unusually large tomb covering approximately 20 acres. This was the tomb of Li Lianying, the Grand Eunuch who once controlled significant influence within the imperial harem. Notably, the tomb was built on a foundation of topsoil, a dense earth layer reserved exclusively for royal mausoleums, highlighting Li Lianying's remarkable status. Inside the tomb, archaeologists were immediately struck by its grandeur. The main chamber featured pristine white marble floors, a symbol of luxury and refinement. At the center stood a striking purple-red coffin on a jade pedestal, adorned with intricate jewelry and bronze coins engraved with the name Li. Every detail reflected the prestige of a man who had lived amid golden halls and wielded immense influence. However, the astonishing and perplexing discovery came when the coffin was opened. Instead of an intact body, the archaeologists found only a mass of soft mud. This immediately raised a critical question. Why would a man of such power and favor have no remains in his coffin? The event sparked numerous hypotheses among historians and archaeologists, each attempting to solve the mystery of his death. Li Lianying had supported Empress Dowager Cixi in her tense power struggle against Emperor Guangxu, yet he was never directly involved in court conspiracies or political intrigues. Therefore, if he were purged, it would have served no clear advantage to any faction and could not have been justified legally. Among the theories, the controversial historian Nan Ngi Dan suggested that Zhang Chaozong, another influential figure at court, invited Li to a meal and secretly ordered his assassination in the Hohai area of Beijing. This hypothesis was quickly dismissed, as Zhang had no clear motive, the location was far from the crime scene, and no major conflict between the two men had been recorded. Other experts proposed that Li Lianying might have been killed during a debt collection trip to Shandong. Yet, this seems unlikely. Given his wealth and status, he would have had no reason to personally collect debts. Supporters of this theory speculate he may have encountered danger immediately after visiting his granddaughter, also in Shandong. So, what really happened? Li Lianying's death remains a mystery. Every theory contains gaps, lacking concrete evidence for confirmation. The secrets of this vast tomb of a powerful grand eunuch lie quietly beneath the compact Tam soil, waiting for future exploration. Have you ever wondered how the intricate webs of power and intrigue within the cold walls of the Forbidden City shaped Li Lianying's complex life? And will the mysteries surrounding his death ever be revealed? What do you think about this story? Which hypothesis seems most plausible to you? Share your thoughts in the comments if you have insights into the secrets of this extraordinary tomb. The 1,400-year-old tomb of the tyrant emperor of the Sui Dynasty, China. Nearly 1,400 years ago, there was a Chinese emperor whose life made the entire empire tremble with fear and anticipation. Yet, after his death, his resting place lay silent beneath the ground for centuries. Only now has it finally revealed itself. What makes this discovery even more intriguing is that the tomb isn't tucked away in towering mountains or a royal restricted zone. Instead, it appeared right next to a construction site in Yangzhou, Jiangsu province, a reminder of how history loves to tease the modern world. This is the tomb of Emperor Yang of Sui, the second and last emperor of the Sui Dynasty. The name Yang Guang is notorious in historical records. He is ranked among the infamous tyrants of imperial China. During his reign, he wielded power ruthlessly, issuing decrees like thunderbolts. Yet his end was bitter. He was killed during a military revolt in 618 CE, which led to the complete collapse of the Sui dynasty. So why is the tomb of such a notorious emperor surprisingly modest, given the grandeur of his life? Experts suggest that the tomb covers only about 215 square feet, significantly smaller than the mausoleums of many other emperors. At first glance, it might seem ironic. A man who shook the empire in life ends up in a surprisingly humble final abode. Yet this modest size is what has allowed the tomb to remain relatively intact over the centuries, suffering little damage from time or human interference. Adjacent to Emperor Yang's tomb, archaeologists also discovered the tomb of Empress Xiao, his consort during the final years of the dynasty. The two tombs were built side by side, a quiet testament that, regardless of history's judgment, he would not be alone in the afterlife. Excavations of Empress Xiao's tomb revealed numerous royal items, from decorative objects to artifacts rich in Sui dynasty cultural symbolism. One of the most important clues confirming the identity of the tomb's occupant is a stone stele in the southern corner, engraved with the emperor's name and his death year, 618 CE, perfectly matching historical records. This serves as a kind of historical signature, settling any disputes about who truly rests beneath Yangzhou. The artifacts themselves have also excited researchers. Exquisitely crafted ceramic statues from Empress Xiao's tomb and bronze door handles shaped like dragon heads from Emperor Yang's tomb are remarkably well preserved. These items not only showcase exquisite artistry, but also reflect the aesthetics, beliefs, and authority of the imperial court at the time. Just looking at a dragon head door handle, one can almost imagine the imperial grandeur of centuries past, even if it now sits quietly in a display case. Thus, the story of Emperor Yang's tomb feels like a slice of history laced with irony. A notorious tyrant, a short-lived dynasty, and a small tomb that slept undisturbed for nearly 1,400 years. History sometimes needs no commentary. These discoveries beneath the earth are enough to make us pause, reflect, and even smile at the unpredictable rise and fall of power and human fate. 3,000-year-old tomb reveals a distorted bronze hand. When people think of archaeology, they often imagine precious artifacts, dust-covered stone steles, or towering tombs that bear the marks of ancient civilizations. But sometimes, excavations are more than a journey into the past. They are like peeling back the pages of an untold story, one that is tragic, strange, and haunting. The excavation in Anyang, Henan Province, China, in December 2000 is a striking example of this. Beneath the arid soil of what was once a glorious capital during the Qing Dynasty, archaeologists unearthed a 3,000-year-old tomb. At first glance, the tomb appeared typical, large in scale, structurally sturdy, and containing hundreds of artifacts. Yet inside, researchers encountered one of the most unusual discoveries of their careers: a bronze right hand, distorted, cold, and meticulously crafted down to the finest details. This hand was far more than a mere work of art. Measuring 5.2 inches in length and 2.7 inches in width, it was hollow inside and attached to a wooden handle that had mostly decayed over time. Its surface was engraved with intricate patterns, animal faces, eyes, but notably, there were no decorations on the fingers themselves. This detail puzzled many experts. Why design it this way? What purpose did it serve? Why was it created at all? The first hypothesis suggested it might be decorative, but given its size and painstaking detail, using it purely for display seemed too simple. Others speculated it could have been an ancient scoop for food, or even an unusually crafted backscratcher. Plausible theories, yet unconvincing. Clues became clearer when archaeologists discovered the tomb's occupant. Buried beneath the cold earth was a military general named Zhang, who had served under Emperor Wu Ding, the 22nd ruler of the Qing Dynasty. Historical records described Zhang as a legendary warrior, renowned on the battlefield for numerous victories. However, during a fierce battle, he lost his right arm entirely. This fact unlocked the mystery of the bronze hand. It was neither a decorative object nor a weapon. It was a sacred prosthetic, a replacement for a missing part of his body, crafted by soldiers under Zhang's command to honor their general after his death. This ritual was both a touching tribute and deeply spiritual. In the worldview of the ancients, death was not an end, and the body needed to remain whole when entering the afterlife. Thus, the bronze hand was the final promise kept by the soldiers to the commander they most revered, ensuring his body remained complete for eternity. Ancient tomb containing vampires and mysterious liquids in Poland. In 2013, an excavation in Gliwice, Poland, uncovered an ancient cemetery that revealed chilling mysteries about the burial customs of people in the past. Construction workers accidentally discovered graves containing human remains buried in extremely unusual positions. These bodies were not laid out in a normal posture. Instead, the skulls were placed between the knees, a burial practice unlike any other known ritual. Dating analysis showed that these individuals died around the 15th to 16th centuries, a time when fear of supernatural beings, especially vampires, ran rampant in the minds of Europeans. Jacek Pierzak, an archaeologist involved in the excavation, explained, "This burial method was not a mistake. It was a deliberate way to prevent the dead from rising from their graves and becoming vampires that could harm the living. These graves likely belonged to people suspected of being vampires, blood-drinking monsters that terrified medieval Poles. To prevent them from coming back, The bodies were decapitated and buried in a gruesome manner. In addition, in 2018, another archaeological discovery captured attention in Alexandria, Egypt. Experts found a black granite coffin inside an ancient tomb, immediately sparking rumors of a deadly curse. Some feared that opening the coffin might awaken the curse and trigger disastrous events. Nevertheless, archaeologists opened it and discovered 3 skeletons immersed in a mysterious red liquid. While tests confirmed that these individuals lived in the region after 332 BCE, the enigma of the red liquid sparked curiosity among thousands. On change.org, over 1,500 people signed a petition requesting to sample the liquid, believing it might grant powers from the dead. Experts, however, warned that consuming the liquid could be extremely dangerous. Beyond having no supernatural effects, drinking it could expose someone to infectious diseases, bacteria, or viruses. Related to these discoveries, archaeologists also uncovered the tomb of King Suthis III, ruler of the Odrysian kingdom in Thrace during the 4th century BCE. His burial mound stood 66 feet high with a diameter of approximately 295 feet. Many valuable grave goods were found, including a golden crown, gold cups, weapons, shields, and a bronze sculpture depicting the king. This discovery highlighted the luxury and power of ancient rulers. These archaeological findings not only provide insight into the customs and beliefs of past civilizations, but also invite us to ponder the mysterious secrets still hidden beneath the earth. Excavations like these continue to unveil captivating stories of long-lost cultures, taking us back to a time when life and death were shrouded in terrifying legends. The 4.45 acres ancient tomb of the talented strategist from the Jia clan, China. In a peaceful rural area of Tangdun village, Changzhou City, Jiangsu Province, China, locals have for generations shared stories about a peculiar pond called Boutang Pond. The name sounds simple enough, but beneath its calm surface lies a story so eerie it sends chills down the spine. According to Mr. Zhang Renliang, now over 70 years old, he heard from his grandfather about a mound rising from the middle of the pond. Strangely, even during scorching droughts lasting 3 months, when all the surrounding rivers and lakes dried up, Boutang Pond never ran dry. The mound stood tall amid the water, as if guarding a secret that had lasted 1,000 years. For decades, no one ever saw the pond dry up. Villagers speculated, perhaps there was an underground spring, or maybe an ancient tomb had been buried there long ago. It wasn't until 1980, when the Northport Brick and Tile Factory project began, that workers decided to drain the pond for inspection. That was the moment one of the most shocking archaeological discoveries in Jiangsu Province was revealed. Once the mud at the bottom was cleared, fragments of ancient relics emerged: ceramics, coins, and intricately crafted objects in the style of the Three Kingdoms period. Villagers immediately alerted the authorities, and a professional archaeological team was sent in. Using modern equipment, they drained the pond completely and were met with a jade block engraved with 4 characters: Jia Ge Zi Du. The team was stunned because Zi Du was the courtesy name of Jia Ge Jin, the elder brother of the legendary strategist Jia Shu, better known in Western literature as Zhu Liang's brother. It turned out that the mound in Boutang Pond was the tomb of Jia Ge Jin, who had served as Grand General, Left Governor, and Inspector of Yuzhou under the Eastern Wu Dynasty. The tomb covers a vast area of roughly 4.5 acres, rising 13 to 16 feet above the pond bed and just 3 feet above the water surface. During excavation, archaeologists discovered simple burial items such as jade ornaments, jade figurines, bronze mirrors, ancient coins, and pottery. These items reflected Jia Ge Jin's character: modest, virtuous, and indifferent to wealth or luxury. Before his death, he instructed his family to bury him plainly, using common clothing for the shroud and avoiding any ostentation. Though his role in the historical novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms is overshadowed by his more famous brother, history records Jia Ge Jin as a brilliant and trusted strategist, often consulted by Sun Quan on matters of state. He was a key figure in strengthening Eastern Wu during the Three Kingdoms period. After his death in 241 CE, he was 68 years old. His tomb lay undisturbed beneath the pond for nearly 2 millennia until its accidental discovery at the end of the 20th century. Later, when the brick factory was dismantled, the tomb came under the management of Changzhou Shenma Pharmaceutical Company. In 2002, the authorities restored the tomb with funding exceeding 100,000 yuan. Yet what intrigues people even more is that, according to locals, many other tombs of the Jia clan, prominent figures yet to be excavated, remain in the area. Could it be that beneath the earth still lie secrets untouched by human hands? Perhaps every ripple on the pond's surface today is a whisper from the past, calling us to explore this forgotten chapter of history. And so, our journey exploring the 12 most mysterious ancient tombs in history comes to a close. Each story, each discovery not only sends chills down the spine, but also raises countless unanswered questions. Are these mysteries the result of timeless ancient wisdom, or are there still things modern science has yet to reach? Whatever the answer may be, one thing is clear: this world still holds countless wonders waiting to be discovered. And who knows, perhaps in the future, you or someone else will be the one to unlock secrets that once seemed impossible. I truly believe that. For now, this marks the end of today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our next thrilling journey of exploration. Goodbye, and see you next time.